And welcome to the December 8th, 2022 meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission. For those of you viewing the meeting remotely, you'll find the meeting agenda on the Planning Department website at accgov.com/planning. For those of you attending in person, on the table by the door, you will find a sign-in sheet and copies of tonight's agenda. For each agenda item, we will begin with a report from the ACC planning staff. This is followed by a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes. We'll then hear from members of the public. 3 minutes are allowed for anyone who wishes to address the commission. If a member of the public is here representing a specific interest group, such as the Homeowners Association, please let us know. When addressing the commission, please provide your name, address, and the nature of your interest in the project, and please direct your comments to the Planning Commission and not to the applicants. The audience is instructed to refrain from applauding or jeering the speakers. Exhibits may be displayed by the applicants or members of the public at the podium. Written correspondence received by noon yesterday has been forwarded to the commission and is part of the public record. Any additional written materials to be placed into the record must be read during public comment within the 3-minute time limit. For all speakers, please pay attention to the timing device near the projector screen. This device will display a yellow warning light when you have 30 seconds left and then a red light when your time is up. When public comment is over, the applicant or their representative may request a 2-minute response. After that, the applicant will take their seat in the audience. At this point, the public portion for this agenda item is closed and the Planning Commission will proceed to discuss the item. We will receive no additional public or applicant comments unless the commissioner directly addresses the applicant with a question. Finally, please note that the microphones in this room are sensitive and that the meeting is being broadcast live. Please turn off or silence your cell phones. Okay, so we'll start with the general business. So the first item is introduction of staff reports and other documents submitted to the Planning Commission at this meeting into the official record. Would anyone like to move?
So moved.
And second by Kristen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, great. And then approval of the November 3rd Planning Commission meeting minutes.
I have one correction to the minutes, which is that the old business item about 1165 Oglethorpe Avenue should reflect that I recused myself from consideration of that matter. But with that amendment, I move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, great. And then is there any May courts report?
No report.
Okay, great. All right, we'll start with our first item under old business. That's 3700 to 3710 Atlanta Highway. Start with the staff report.
Make that full screen if you don't mind. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Jakewies. I'm a staff member with the planning department here. Come to present the staff report section on 3700 through 3710 Atlanta Highway, otherwise known as the Georgia Square Mall. The request is to go from employment center and general business on the future land use map to just general business. There's a small piece that you'll see on the map that is employment center, and the applicant has requested to go all the way to general business. And they're also requesting to go from commercial general to commercial general plan development because they have some waivers. The overall proposal is to redevelop the mall property to include residential, commercial, and office, basically turn it into something of a mixed-use neighborhood. Specifically, this would involve demolishing and renovating parts of the mall into commercial and office space. If you look at the 2 floors there, there's approximately 800,000 square feet of commercial space there. They would reduce that down to about 300,000 and add some offices in there. They're also going to add 72,000 square feet of new commercial space on the site, approximately 1,200 residences, about 2,000 bedrooms, and then those are broken down into approximately 200 townhomes, 986 multifamily units. 10% of the multifamily units would be reserved for people making 80% of the area median income, so those are set aside as affordable units. They're also proposing to add green space and stormwater management space to the site, and approximately 2,900 parking spaces. This is a combination of surface lots, on-street parking, and parking decks. This project would be multi-phased. Phase 1 would be the mall demo and renovation, about 100 townhomes and 446 multifamily units, 52,000 square feet of commercial space, the streets, stormwater infrastructure, and they're setting aside a space for a transit station that would be built by Athens-Clarke County sometime in the next 3 years. That's approximately 70% of the project there. Phases 2 and 3 would involve the rest of the townhomes, about 100 of those, 540 multifamily units. This, as the applicant has said, is subject to change per market conditions. Phase 1 is the one that is nailed down. Phase 2 and 3 could considerably alter over the course of the project. This is an aerial of the site. As you can see, it's a very large site, about 75 acres. The loop is in the bottom right corner. Atlanta Highway runs to the south there. And the dominant feature of this site is asphalt. About 71% of the site, or 53 acres, is asphalt paving just for the parking there. So that's about as automobile oriented as you can get. And there's an opportunity here to dramatically alter that. This is the future land use map. On the left is the existing one. You can see in the top corner, there's a little bit of a section that was designated as employment center, and then that would move into join what the rest of the site is already, which is general business. And the property is already zoned CG. It would just go from CG to CG plan development. As you can see, this is characteristic of Atlanta Highway, heavily commercial, lots of CG zoning. So it would not create any isolated districts. It'd be very consistent with the zoning that's already out there. This is a site plan. The plan is very large, so I apologize if it's difficult to see the exact details. You can see a very large center mass there is the remaining mall, basically the Belk, and some of the commercial space behind it is going to remain. They will demolish the old Sears on the west side, and then demolish basically everything east of the Belk, where the JCPenney and the Macy's were, to make way for the Center Green running down that side. And then on the other side of the Center Green is going to be one of the large mixed-use apartment buildings. Townhomes roughly go around the edge in something of a semicircle or a horseshoe. And then there's a couple of other very large multifamily buildings located in the corner, at the southeast corner, and on the west side. And then at the top, you would see where that triangle is. There's stormwater management there, and then also a large multifamily building that's preserved for senior housing. This is a image of the phasing. The purple is phase 1A. You can see that covers most of the site. Phase 1B is going to be the transit center and that western street there in the corner. Phase 2 is multifamily and townhomes, and then the green phases there are phases either 2 or 3, the out parcels, one of the other large buildings, subject to change per market conditions. This is a overlay with the site plan on an aerial of the site. Because the site is so large and it's kind of hard to determine what is exactly going where when you just look at the site plan. This is an attempt to allow an easy comparison. You have this sheet in front of you. It may not show up super well on this screen, so I'd urge you to take a look at the sheet in front of you. We went out and took some pictures of the existing site right here. So this is looking at the Belk. From my back here is towards Atlanta Highway, approximately. The area to the right, you can see there's a tree and a glass facade behind that tree. That area is going to be demolished to make way for the Center Green. The Belk would remain. There would be something of a plaza in front of that Belk, a small commercial building. That's essentially what's going to happen with that part of the site. There'll be some surface parking there as well. This is on the other end of the Center Green. My back here would be to the senior housing. It's a white looking building on the center left would basically be demolished to make way for the Center Green. The rest of the mall on the right is basically going to remain as is. And that's a closer view of that part of the mall. The applicant did not, can you go back? The applicant did not show us new renderings for the facade. So at this time, we're left to assume that that facade will remain as is. This area is going to be a parking lot. It's going to be a redone parking lot, but it's going to be a surface parking lot here where you see the parking. Go to the next slide, please. This is just to the right of that last image. You can see along the trees there, there's a slope. This site is not completely flat. There's some significant areas where there's some grade changes that have had to They've had to take that into account when doing their engineering and their site work. So beyond these trees would be townhomes in the phase 2. And then this parking lot would be reworked as a updated surface parking lot. And this part of the mall that you can see would stay. They've provided some renderings of what they're proposing here. This is the senior residential building. This folks looking out those windows would be able to see onto the center green. Next slide. This is the new mall facade. This is the side that would face the center green. There's 3 other sides of the mall that 2 of them which would remain. And then another side would get a new facade because that's where the Sears was tying in. They haven't shown that. This is what they've shown. Staff feels like there may be an opportunity here for some additional architecture, perhaps make it a little bit more monumental and stand out as you're in that center green. The next image, this is the building across the center green, building 4. This would face the mall. You can see on the bottom, there is ground floor commercial going all the way across. There's a parking garage entry, and then residences all the way across 4 levels there. This is the back of that building. You can see that middle there is the screening on the parking deck. It's basically 2 very large block scale apartment buildings tied together by a middle parking deck. It's about 600 feet from end to end approximately, which is like walking from the Georgia Theater down to the Hilton parking deck on Clayton. Right now, they're not showing a lot of doors or entryways or any kind of thing that would interest pedestrians as they're walking through here. There is a sidewalk here. You would be looking at this from some of the townhomes as you step out your front door. We have some concerns that the lack of doors here and the large scale of the building would create some dead space for pedestrians and space that folks would try to ignore or avoid. And this is a spot where we're trying to attract people into a new, maybe perhaps downtown type neighborhood. So we have some concerns about that. One of our conditions reflects the fact that we think that there should be a bike and pedestrian walkway either through this building or perhaps breaking up the building to allow connection between the townhomes and the center green and the rest of the mall and the rest of the project. So you should be able to see that reflected in the staff report. Next slide, please. This is building 5. This is scheduled for phase 2 or 3. As you would come in from Atlanta Highway, you would see this building on your right. If you took the main street that goes onto the center green, we'd like to see as a staff a little bit more activation of this part to draw people in. There is a little bit of commercial proposed there at the corner. On the other side of this is the surface parking lot and a very small commercial building. Next slide. This is building 7. This is another one of the large multifamily residential buildings scheduled for phase 2. This building it's very large, it's 240 units wrapped around a 540 space parking deck. And it compares on the next slide to this building, which is part of the Mark. So it's another very large building. The same concerns about creating too much dead space apply to that building as well, because that doesn't have any ground floor commercial. Not this building, but the previous one doesn't have any ground floor commercial component here. It's very large. We think it could potentially create some of those same concerns that we have with building 4. And this is a rendering of the townhomes. They have a couple different designs. This is one of them, but they all approximately look similar to this. So our staff report is very extensive. I hope you had a chance to dive in. There's a lot of details in there. We're only scratching the surface here with this presentation. Generally, we think that the proposal, the request, is consistent with future land use and the zoning maps. We would note that the general definition of land use does call for a bit more pedestrian orientation than perhaps is provided here at the mall as it exists, is about as automobile oriented as you can get. So any change is going to improve that for folks who are on foot or walking or taking transit. The block scale buildings that exceed some of our block maximums do create some concerns about whether we're going to activate all of the frontage there, maybe create some unused space. The center green is currently flanked by 4 travel lanes, 2 on either side, plus some on-street parking. We think that there might be an opportunity there to shrink some of that automobile space and center green, create a better place for folks to gather. And it looks like there are 12-foot travel lanes on the street network here. And we think those could shrunk potentially. 12 feet tends to be more appropriate for highways, less appropriate for local streets. But generally consistent with future land use and zoning map. Compared to the previous version of this plan, we have significantly improved the alignment with the 2018 comprehensive plan. We do note that there are some spaces for greater alignment, some potentially missed opportunities here, ways that we could improve the project. For example, the project lacks housing types that are in between the single family attached units, the townhomes, and block sized apartments. We think that given the relatively blank slate that we're working with here, that there would be an opportunity for some of the missing middle housing category, perhaps even some of the larger ones, the ones that have 12, 18, 20 units. We could set this up, it's similar in scale to downtown. Downtown's about 90 acres. This is about 75 acres. Downtown has a little bit tighter and smaller block structure. It's a little bit more activated. And instead of using some of the large buildings, we're very comfortable with the density, but perhaps we could rearrange that density and redistribute it in some more quote middle types of housing. Like network, I've mentioned that it does dramatically improve access to the site. There is a multi-use path that's going throughout the site. It'll provide access for folks walking and biking, but some of the blocks are very large. I've mentioned that already. The comprehensive plan would love to see some more public art, particularly in larger redevelopment projects, and there is no public art proposed here at this time. The green spaces lack some of the design elements that we think would draw them in to create a more park-like environment. They, particularly the center green, for example, is mostly just landscaping, a band shell, and some trees. And so we would like to see some more programmatic designed elements there that would draw people in and create a usable space and not just some ornamental landscaping. Same thing with the dual use stormwater management greens. The applicant hasn't provided a lot of details on what those would look like. We want to make sure that those aren't just kind of marshy, wetter versions of the center green, and that they would also be places where people could gather and truly serve that dual purpose. We would say that the architecture is probably the only spot where it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan asks developers to identify areas where you could create a unique neighborhood with a cohesive design, and the mall is an opportunity to do that. What we've basically gotten here in this proposal is basically the standard type of stuff that you see, particularly on the large multifamily buildings. I call it quote modern hodgepodge of materials and colors. And we think there's an opportunity here to create a really iconic design that really draws people in. Places like Avalon or Swanee Town Center have used those kinds of designs. And we think there's an opportunity to elevate the design here. That's why we have, you'll see that recommended in our conditions. Next slide, please. The applicant has requested 8 waivers. You can see a breakdown of each of those waivers in your staff report. We support some of them. We have conditioned support for some of them. We don't support some of them. And then there's one that is we have determined is unnecessary. The main ones that I would call your attention to are that we would like to see conditional support for a reduction in the plaza requirement based on elevating these green spaces with some design elements to create more park-like spaces. And then the building length waiver to go to 600 or 580 feet, I believe is where they were at. We don't support that waiver. At least we would like to see the pedestrian and bike connection that I mentioned through building 4 between a broken up building 4. So those are the waivers. We would note there's a spot in your report that talks about the balance of land uses, and we don't talk about that super often because we don't usually get something that's the scale that could tip the balance of land uses. Here we have an opportunity to see the balance of land uses shift. Folks will tell you in the 80s that when the original mall was built, it shifted commerce out of downtown. The Macy's used to be downtown, the department stores used to be downtown, everything like that migrated out to the mall, left downtown vacant. Downtown eventually comes back as an entertainment district. And so that shifts our land uses for better or for worse. And here we have another generational opportunity to create what we think could be a very attractive quote, downtown or the west side. This is why staff is seeking added flexibility in our design changes. This is why we've added conditions here, because we don't want to miss this once in the generation opportunity to create a wonderful neighborhood here for folks. Overall, we would say that the proposal includes the basic components of the neighborhood. They're all there, but staff anticipates additional opportunities moving forward to realize its full potential with some amendments. That is why we are recommending approval with conditions. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Over to the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Scott Haynes. I work for W Engineering. I'm a landscape architect, 355 Anita Street. Advance the slide.
Yes, they have the presentation here.
You would go ahead and advance one more for me. Thank you. I wanted to start with this existing conditions page because I think it's the best place to start is where we're at now. You hear a survey of the malls that exist today. And what we see here is what will remain in green and what will be removed in red. Also note that the belt is part of the remaining portion of the building. And it's important to know they have approval rights over the redevelopment of this plan. It's part of their contract that they have right now, which means they have a say also in maintaining the sheds to their store and also to maintain a certain amount of surface parking. This is largely what's driving the need to keep some of the surface parking in front of the mall. Please, next slide. Here's our site plan. Now, going into this development of this plan, we heard many things from staff and from this board. We heard the need for a grid style type of layout. We heard the term auxiliary downtown, the need to incorporate surrounding area and to avoid pod development, need for sidewalks on Huntington in addition to overall pedestrian improvements, incorporation of a transit station, and enhanced roadway infrastructure such as traffic circles to aid in the entering and exit of traffic. We also heard this planning commission recommend to look at other examples of how these things have been done and included a recommendation for the read of retrofitting suburbia. It's a great book. One of the things that jumped out about this in this book was some of the post analysis that have been done and how these kinds of projects can fall short in lacking incorporation in the surrounding neighborhood. So we wanted to make sure we didn't miss that. In an effort to weave this project into the fabric of the surrounding neighborhood, we consider both improving connections to the surrounding community and providing a proper transition of intensities between the edges and the center of the project. You can see that here as in the colors. We eliminated the section of Ring Road that is parallel to Huntington and placed townhomes along that frontage. This not only engages Huntington, but also offers a good transition of use between the existing single family on Huntington and the mixed use core of the proposed development. I'm talking about this area right here. On the opposite side of the project, we looked at ways to encourage future interconnectivity. The first was to provide a curb cut at the internal intersection between Racetrack and Academia, that is right here. So in the future, that connection can be made through those properties to Crane Drive and potentially even further beyond to Cleveland Road. This connection would cut through the current racetrack pond, so we've made volume allowances in our pond proposed to accommodate that change. North, we also propose an additional connection point to allow the future connection to the Meadowland property. You can see that right here. This will allow the property to connect to the development if renovation or redevelopment of that property were to occur in the future. We took the recommendation to incorporate traffic circles into the project. We did this not only at the Maryland Farmer intersection, but also the Huntington Road intersection and at the center entrance to the project. The results from our TIA analysis show that these roundabouts will function quite well. As you can see, these roundabouts connect the project to a street grid. This grid was determined by balancing what was to remain of the mall, including some of the parking that was required to remain for Belt, topographical challenges of the site, and also implementation of the center green. The center green is the heart of this project. We envision the space to be activated with trees and landscaping and other amenity features, such as the band shell that is shown at the northern end. We do envision there to be further activation of the space as well than what's just shown here. This is where we start. On either end of the green, we are showing stormwater quality treatment areas We see these spaces as opportunities to amenitize stormwater infrastructure. These areas will be designed for infiltration and will draw down quickly after a rain event. In dry conditions, these will serve as expansions to the center green. As you can see from the plan, we have placed a higher intensity uses around the center green, transitioning out to multifamily and then to single-family townhomes. We have placed a transit station in the southwest corner of the site to facilitate bus traffic into and out of the project. There are also 3 additional bus stops distributed around the site. Those are approximately here at the senior housing, and then one here in the corner near the center green entry. Recognize that we should do all we can to depart from the existing autocentric nature of this mall, understanding that this is a challenge due to the need for certain elements to the mall to remain functional throughout the construction and to continue on after it. It is also worth pointing out that retailer and tenants often have their own requirements for parking. So if we expect to attract retail back to this location, we cannot fully or even largely eliminate parking. What we have tried to do is reduce surface parking lots in place of on-street parking whenever we can. We've also planned for the decks in the multifamily developments to be overparked, so that additional parking can be used for visitors to the site. Overall, we are proposing a development that is underparked, but within the ability to administratively approve that. Next slide, please. Here's a exhibit showing pedestrian circulation. You can see the 12-foot wide path in orange and the standard sidewalk and other plaza type areas in blue. Of course, one of the things that's needed to get away from cars is a robust alternative transportation and pedestrian infrastructure. We work with leisure services and other departments in the design of this. Following their recommendation, we designed a 12-foot wide multi-use path in place of bike lanes. As you can see, the 12-foot wide multi-use path circles the site and makes connections from the project to the adjoining community. The total length of this path is just below 1.5 miles. That is in addition to the regular sidewalk shown in blue. This path also provides for rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs as they're commonly termed. That would be at roundabouts and crossings at all the roundabout locations. Additionally, we have made a proffer through this application to provide up to $50,000 to ACC for the construction of sidewalk from the intersection of Maryland Farmer and Cleveland, which is not shown on this slide. It is just west here. Sidewalk runs along Maryland Farmer, but is absent between the intersection of Cleveland and the intersection of the Lake Mueller subdivision. That sidewalk would be constructed by ACC with the funds that we are proposing to proffer. Next slide, please. Moving to stormwater, it was surprising to find that really isn't any stormwater management on the site today. In 2018, a study was produced by Arcadis for ACC to look at watershed management plan for the Oconee River. One of the main solutions provided in that study was a stormwater management plan at the site. Right, so as you see from the plan, the last concept that was submitted had significantly improved upon the existing condition, which was here in terms of impervious versus pervious surface. But we were able to improve upon this by an additional 6% or another 4.5 acres. Overall, we're reducing impervious cover from today by 19 acres. In addition to providing stormwater detention and treatment for the entire site. Next slide, please. Reducing impervious cover is beneficial for combating heat island effect. This is especially true when paired with healthy canopy of shade-bearing trees. The site really has little existing canopy, and what is existing does very little to shade the parking. Given the low quality and quantity of the existing material, nearly all of the requirement for tree management will need to be made through new plantings of both individual trees and pockets of reforestation. Individual trees in the plan you see represent over 1,000 new trees to be planted. Next slide. Here's the proposed phasing plan that we saw earlier. We are calling for a 2-part phase. First phase, you can see that first 1A is purple and 1B is this blue color. This split first phase approach is largely due to the necessity to keep the remaining portion of the mall functional throughout development. As you can see, the majority of the project will be constructed within the first phase. We have shown the remainder of the project to be constructed in 2 or 3 additional phases, depending on market demand and conditions. Next slide, please. I know we've covered a lot here quickly. I'm sure there are plenty of questions and comments to be made, and we certainly welcome those. Before concluding, I would like to thank everyone that has contributed to the development of this plan. That includes ACC staff and all departments that contribute time and comments and review. We also want to thank all the community members, either those who showed up at town halls or contacted us individually. From the moment that we became involved in this project, we understood that it was a community partnership. And we really hope that that's shining through in this plan tonight. I want to thank you for your time. We'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time for the public comment portion of this application. Would anyone here wish to speak in favor of this application? So you can go to the podium. And is anyone here in favor? Yep, please.
Brad, can we turn up the air conditioning? All these bodies are kind of.
Hi, I'm Teresa Friedlander, 115 Middleton Place. I know a couple of you from T-Bus. I had the opportunity to go to the town hall that Commissioner Hull arranged, and I went in with very low expectations, you know, thinking it was just going to be another prison yard type configuration. And I thought they did a really good job of listening to the community and redeveloping, you know, redesigning their proposal. So I just wanted to say that I think it's that they're doing a great job here. I agree that there should be some of those modifications that staff presented to make it better. But I do feel like it's an important project, and I hope that it will get through. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this application?
Hi, I'm David Lyle. I live at 178 Virginia Avenue. And I'm here because I believe we need much more housing in Athens. We have a situation where we have underbuilt tremendously for 20 years. Everything, I grew up in Athens, everything that is good about Athens is based on cheap housing. I saw James Ponsel speak recently. He talked about his view of Athens as a place where, and this is a little bit of a paraphrase, but a place where you can go live cheap, be creative, and do great things. So that's, you know, that's the old Athens of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We've lost that. Nobody's living cheap here now. Also, it's a place where, unfortunately, our big employers, the university, the hospitals, they don't pay the greatest wages, but that is a lot of jobs, and those are jobs that can give people an entryway into the middle class, provided they can live cheap. And again, they can't do that. So, you know, it seems to me that there's been a process here. This project has been improved. It's maybe not perfect. You know, I leave it to others to offer specific suggestions for improvement, but we have to build more housing. And if we can't do it on a derelict mall site, then I don't know where we ever are. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else here to speak in favor of this application?
Chair Planning Commission, I'm John Williams. I'm President and CEO of W&A Engineering. I've been coming to this podium now almost as long as Brad's been here, but not quite, about 23 years. And I can tell you, in 23 years of coming to this podium, I haven't seen a more transformational project for a community. We haven't represented a more transformational project for the community. So grateful for the opportunity to be involved with this, for the trust of the developers of the project, and really for their leaning into the community and listening to what had to be done. They had a plan for you. It was not a good plan for the community. It's not a good plan for the comp plan. And they basically stopped, backed up, punted, and came to us and said, you know, can you help us? Can you help us get there? Scott Haynes and his team's done an amazing job. How many hours we've spent meeting with staff about the plan. And just, I believe the conditions are spot on. They're fine. We would love the opportunity to work some of these things, details out with staff as we go. As you can see, this is a tremendous project, a Herculean effort that'll be developed over a 5-year period of time. And, things are going to come up and I'm confident in our ability to work with staff to continue to improve the project throughout the process. I would like to mention something that, hasn't been mentioned yet and other than the gentleman before me with regard to housing. I think this will be the first substantial effort for affordable housing in the community. There's been a couple projects I know that have come in recently under the new affordable housing ordinance. We are also following that ordinance with regard to our request. This project has 10% of all available beds will be done at 80% of the area median income. It's about 99 units. It'll be monitored and policed on a monthly and annual basis by Athens-Clarke County and the system that they set up. So we're following the Affordable Housing Code in all respects with regard to the calculations, how it gets done, how it gets monitored, how it gets built. So the beds are, allocated properly. The apartments that are affordable are the same exact design as other units there. And that's something else I'm really excited about because I've watched over the years, our housing become increasingly difficult in Athens. And the gentleman before me is right. It's a supply and demand issue. It's also a cost issue. Development's gotten more expensive. And this is a way that we can frame this affordability into this area. Also really excited to partner with Athens-Clarke County with regard to the transit station. I know they have big plans about trying to continue to expand their award-winning service out there. And I think that this is a great location for that. And developers are really excited about that. So like Scott, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have that may come up about the plan or the project or the process at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor of the application? And anyone here to speak in opposition to the application?
Hey, I'm Jean Crown. I live in Lake Mealer on Mealer Circle, right behind the mall. And I've lived there for over 10 years. And I'm not against expanding or doing something with the mall, but I think this is so many units. The traffic is horrible on Atlanta Highway now. And it's hard to get out on Atlanta Highway. The traffic backs up trying to get out. With this many units going in this mall, I don't know how people are going to get out. And not everybody's going to take the bus. They're not all going downtown Athens. They have to drive to work wherever they live. So I would like to see some senior housing, affordable senior housing. We don't have that in this town as far as I know, because I tried to find an apartment for someone about a month ago. Impossible. The cheapest I could find is $1,500 a month. And it would be nice if we had senior housing and if they could do, like some commercial for people, like a drugstore and a grocery store. And if they had seniors living there, they would be able to go to the store without even leaving the complex. But with the amount of apartments they're proposing, I can't even imagine what the traffic will be like. So that's my input.
Thank you.
I believe that Athens needs more housing, but my problem with this plan is everything looks the same. There is absolutely no architectural effort here to make this look special. And in a very short period of time, 5 to 10 years, it's just going to look like a dump because all those units, those huge long units, everything is the same uninteresting architecture. And one of the things that Athens has suffered in the last 20 years is the proliferation of uninteresting buildings. All you have to do is look downtown at that. Buildings that were put up for student housing. They're just basically rectangular blocks and they put a few windows in. Okay, so I don't have a problem with this, but I think you need to require the developers to put a little more imagination into the housing units and what they look like.
Sure. We get your name and address for the record?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Sidney Kushner, I live at 178 Deering Street.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Nancy Colburn. I live at 237 Mueller Circle in Bogart. And I have been watching the development of this project very closely because I have been very concerned about the amount of traffic that would be added to Atlanta Highway. I would like to see the hands of people who have used Atlanta Highway in the last week. All right, let's say that there were only 500 units. And let's say that each unit had at least one car, if not two. How many of you think that adding another 1,000 cars to Atlanta Highway would be to your advantage or anybody's advantage? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay.
Wait a minute.
Over there. Oh,
Yes.
come on up. Thank you.
My name is Allison Huff, and I live at 165 Yorkshire Road, which is right behind the mall. I don't have a prepared speech today because I have just gotten back from an extensive vacation. And I was able to look at this design briefly this afternoon. I was struck by the staff report and the many factors that they pointed out that were missed opportunities to make this a truly exceptional plan. I'm happy to hear this being referred to as a generational opportunity of transformation. This location, this site, its location on the western entrance of the town is truly a great opportunity to put something special. This plan is short of that mark of being a generational and transformative plan. I hearken back to a comment that was made at a previous thing where this was just a pizza with some pepperonis spread on top with a few green peppers. The green space plan is woefully inadequate in terms of some of the comments that the commission has made in the past about wanting to have something that just wasn't outlines. This looks like a child's drawing that could just be, colored in and filled in with a heavy emphasis on just sticking to the outlines, sticking to the margins. I encourage the developers to continue to work and to listen carefully to the staff reports that have been put in, to reread the very good book that was recommended by several of you about how to transform and remodel old sites, and to make this a place that you wouldn't just drive by or drive around, that you would actually engage in this site.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, would you all like to take 2 minutes?
Thank you. Again, my name's Scott Haynes. Just a couple of quick responses. We know traffic's a concern of a lot of people. I drive Atlanta Highway at least twice a day, this section. We did an analysis, a traffic study, and it showed that on full build out, all of the intersections would function, and that it was a good result. I'd like to say also, it's important to note that GDOT has plans right now, close to being ready for implementation. They're so close, we've actually included those drawings on our plans as what that frontage will look like. So what you're seeing there in the bottom comes from GDOT's plans, and we've worked with them and engaged them with staff to make sure that this development will dovetail nicely into what they have planned, including their connections for multi-use path that they are proposing as well. And as housing was mentioned, the orange at the very north of the plan, top of the green, is dedicated senior housing, age-restricted housing. And as mentioned, that we have 10% affordability. That includes units that are 10% of those senior housing units as well. I know that you look at this plan at this scale, we see a center green that seems to be void of some type of detail. Well, that's generally because of the scale we have going on before us here. We totally intend on activating that space. It's in everyone's best interest, including the developer, to make sure that it's a space that creates draw and gravity for this project. It is the heart, as I mentioned, of this project. And as a landscape architect, I'm extremely excited about the potential opportunity to get to design further in that space. So I can guarantee that what's there on this plan is where we start. The activation, the elements that will be included in that space will be something that we can all be proud of in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll start with our planning commission discussion. Would anyone like to start us off? I would like to start with one comment, which is just to thank staff for, I can't imagine how much time it took to do what you guys did with the staff report. So thank you.
Took a long time to read it.
Yeah.
5 times more to write it.
Yeah, I've never had quite as strong an urge to applaud during a planning commission meeting. Presentation, just masterclass. I loved it. This is amazing. This is so much work from everyone. Thank you. So with that said, the conditions of the staff recommendation, I think are fantastic, and that they thread the needle of, you know, this is such a large piece of land that there is no way to zoom in deep enough to get to the interesting parts before a basic plan gets approved. And so having these conditions in that would allow things to move forward while still having those checkpoints with staff, with ACC government, I think that it makes sense to have this many conditions, and I like how I think that the very good ones were selected, and I do like the architecture being amended administratively with staff review and approval. Again, there's so much architecture that if architecture changes were to be had to be brought before a vote before the planning commission and then the mayor commission every single time, I can't imagine that any architecture changes would even happen. And certainly not as many as folks want to see. And so I think that it's a good idea to give that level of flexibility. Clearly, the staff that is reviewing this have a lot of expertise and will have a lot of good input on those issues. And so I think that's a good idea. My biggest condition, and this is actually a question. For the applicant shall request a waiver for exceeding the 3-acre block maximum. If we condition that they request a waiver, is it assumed that waiver could be denied later?
I mean, the waiver request would be included prior to it going to the mayor and commission, just so that it is complete.
Oh,
There was a standard, they did not ask for the waiver. I mean, the notion in the largest building that is the violator is the one directly across from the linear park from the existing mall.
Yeah.
At a minimum, what we're looking for, and it shows up in another condition, is that center section of that building. If you are in the linear park and you live behind that building in the townhouses, or you're coming off the multi-purpose trail, you should be able to, there should be a public access point for a pedestrian and a bicycle to be able to move through the center of that building to get from one side to the other without having to go all the way around. And we feel like that's certainly doable. And that's why that is one of the shalls instead of cans. But I appreciate your observation on what we were trying to do with conditions, which are a little bit different than we normally bring you, is we don't want to lose an opportunity down the road. If we get a developer in phase 2 that's got a new, fresh idea, that they'd be willing to do it. We hear this all the time, but if I've got to spend 5 months going back through the zoning process, I'm just going to build what's on the plan.
Absolutely.
Love to change it. Now, that doesn't commit staff to having to let them change it. If it's something that we don't agree with, we can always say, you can build what's on the plan, or you can go back through the zoning process. But the ability to continue that discussion and to continue to tweak and improve and get down into the weeds with the public art and the programming of those green spaces, we want that flexibility without having to constantly be coming back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I will say that condition and that part of the staff report was what stuck with me the most about the thing that worries me the most about this plan. And I hope that something can be done, because this is scary to me. This is a frightening amount of building to have to walk past. It feels unwelcoming. It feels like I do not want to be around it. It feels like, I don't know, I can't get out. I'm trapped. And with the issue with the doors is also a really big one. If you don't have doors, you don't have people coming and going, you make it unsafe to walk past there, especially at night. And you got a lot of people who live here. And obviously we want this to be a space for daytime and nighttime. It's a whole community. So I don't know how much would have to go into that issue being made better. But I hope to see something.
Could I make a suggestion maybe on how we go about this conversation? What I would maybe suggest is that if anyone wanted to give an overall comment, do that. But then would it make sense to go through each of the staff recommendations and discuss those kind of in turn? Or what do you all think?
I think we should be able to do both at the same time.
Okay.
That's fine.
So just for the sake of the record, since YouTube will not have captured which page scares Commissioner Gearing, I believe it was building 4, east and west elevation. And I understood staff to be saying that the east elevation that faces away from the center green has no commercial, and so it's kind of imposing. But the west elevation that faces toward the center green is full of commercial restaurant spaces and stuff like that. So that staff did not have the same concern about it. Did I understand that right?
From an architecture standpoint, yes. The west facing side that faces the green is just it's a function of length without being able to get to the other side of the building.
Yeah.
It's just our solution versus saying you need to cut it into 2 buildings. Well, there's a structured parking deck in the center of it. It's really difficult and significantly plan changing to break the building in 2. But if you can at least, as a person that lives in the townhouses, get through that building without having to go all the way to one end or the other, we feel like that's an improvement that will help offset that waiver for the block size.
Yeah, and so I guess my overall comments, I agree with everything that almost everything that Commissioner Gearing just said about I really appreciated the staff's building in a flexibility so that architectural improvements and other things can be made over time. Bigger picture, I think Mr. Lyle just hit the nail on the head for me that Athens needs housing. Part of what made Athens great back in the day was cheap housing and all the human creativity that comes from that. And we really have lost that. And so I think massive amount of housing are a big part of the answer to maintaining what makes Athens special. So big picture, I'm very much in favor of this development. Sort of smaller detail picture, I agree completely with staff's suggestion that some more missing middle types would be appreciated here, 12 plexes and courtyard apartments, and rather than just uniform townhomes here, massive multifamily apartments here, like stuff in between that, I think would make it much more interesting and would serve the developer as well as the community. To the extent that y'all are willing to do that, I would certainly appreciate it down the road. And I think staff is on the same page as. I'm very comfortable giving staff the flexibility to implement those ideas in consultation with the developer. I did have one sort of specific, we got a citizen comment that I thought was persuasive about the vehicle lanes around the center green. The diagram, there's parking on both sides of the street and 2 one-way lanes of traffic in each direction on the west side and 2 one-way lanes of traffic. I mean, both go in the same direction on the west side and two more lanes coming back the other way on the east side. And that does make the street awfully wide, and it makes the sort of pedestrian connection to the between the commercial spaces and the center green less attractive. And so I wondered, I just wanted to ask the applicant if you feel like you need 2 travel lanes on each side of the center green in addition to the angled parking, which I think makes those paved areas 55 or 60 feet wide. Is it possible either to eliminate some of that parking, so there's parking on one side but not both, so the green's wider, or to eliminate one of the 2 center lanes, either all the way across or in pockets?
We can just talk. Our rationale behind double lanes is essentially some of that space potentially be used by delivery. Imagine you're driving downtown Athens and you have that center lane. It's constantly the center of the day. In the middle of the day, there's a truck parked there. We got stuff wrapping around it. You can imagine in a single lane scenario, once that truck stops, or even someone backing out of a parking space starts to build congestion. As far as the parking amount, again, we are underparked, be it on about 300 spaces, but providing enough people, we like to think we are not lazy, but we are, and people like to park as close as they can to those retail spaces. And so retail providers are encouraged by that. Providing at least some parking in front of those spaces is sort of the balance. Now, we understand that is in conflict with pedestrians and the center green. And that's why we provided raised crossings at those pedestrian crossings. So that's both through the center, that mid block, and on either end. All 4 of those intersections are also raised. So this does help to sort of give that back to the pedestrian and take it back from the vehicle.
I love the raised intersections. I'm glad to hear that. I do, and I understand what you're saying, like in terms of people backing out and therefore traffic having to stop for a moment. I think that makes it more pedestrian friendly and is actually a feature, not a bug. I hear you on delivery lanes and I might say.
Could it be loading docks?
Well, I think that some of your tenants on those middle sections of spaces, you're going to have some front door delivery. There will be some rear corridor and there will be some opportunity for loading docks. But we see this commonly in downtown Athens in many cases. So it's very possible and probable.
Yeah, I wonder if perhaps, 8 or 10 contiguous parking spaces could be eliminated so that there's a truck loading, pull-in loading zone or something. Just, it's an idea. It's not a condition, but it's something that I think would make it more friendly for pedestrians if you guys would consider that, but you don't have to debate about it. I just wanted to get your perspective on it.
Could I add one more thing?
Of course.
Fire protection is a big issue, and providing fire lane in front of these buildings cannot be accomplished with a single lane. So we're going to need that clear space that's obtained by 2 lanes of traffic to provide for aerial access.
Okay.
Aerial apparatus.
All right. Thank you. And I just had one more question about the affordability. I heard Mr. Williams say that you're going to comply essentially with the inclusionary zoning ordinance. Is there a binding mechanism for that? Because I didn't see anything in the report that the applicant submitted or the staff report about how that works. Is it just that you're going to do the ordinance process with staff?
No, I believe it's in our staff report. I mean, it's in our report to staff, which becomes a part of the binding. It becomes part of the state law. So what we proffer, anything that's on our plan or in our report that we submit becomes a part of the binding PD, regardless of what staff says in their report.
Okay,
So we can't change that. It's unchangeable.
okay, so maybe it's a question we have.
For that.
Brad, can you confirm that the 10% affordable, not that these developers wouldn't do it, but if they sold the project when it was half built or before it was built to somebody else, would it be binding as part of the PD approval that 10% of the senior units and 10% of the other units are permanently affordable?
If they utilize the approach that's outlined in the inclusionary zoning section of the ordinance now, as it specifically, just as it relates to the development agreement, then that it's an agreement that ultimately is overseen and administered through our Housing and Community Development Department, similar to if somebody were seeking additional density as part of an inclusionary zoning. I mean, we said for a long time in advance of adopting the inclusionary zoning ordinance that just purely through zoning as a condition, we're really not set up from a staffing standpoint to, if we get a complaint that they're not annually meeting their 10% and have to go in and start evaluating rents and rates and those types of things, it's a difficult to enforce condition. But with this, now that we've got the inclusionary zoning and we're building that experience with the development agreements, I would think that would be the approach
Absolutely.
that we would take with this as part of the permitting, that they would need to enter in with the development agreement that identifies the units, identifies the rates and the values, and then that's administered through our HCD department.
Okay, so what
Essentially a
we'd be
30
submitting to, what we would be voting on today would bind them to do proceed.
And then
Okay.
administratively, we could process it as it works through with that agreement
To that number of units and the
and the 80% AMI.
percent AMI. That's what we've agreed to be bound to.
So overall, major improvement from what we saw before, and I really do appreciate the responsiveness of the developer. Basically, I mean, when I look at it here or here, I'm seeing the kind of grid design that I want to see, and a mix of housing. I do agree that it would be great as phase 2, is it 2 and 3? Yeah, you got 1A, 1B, 2. I'm very comfortable giving staff that administrative authority to work with the developers so that maybe some of these larger buildings can become more broken up, more house scale or big house scale. I do want to say that for the big priorities I have right now, which I believe are addressed in the staff conditions, are the big building. I think that's building 3. No, which one is the big building? 4. Thank you. And also building 3, which is the senior housing in the back. Do I have the numbers right? I don't think there needs to be parking in front of that building, and then you cross a road so that people who live there are, they have to do a lot to get to the walkways, the green space, et cetera. So, and it looks like staff condition number 6 addresses that. I do have one question for you, Brad. So the condition number 2 is that you're requiring them to request a waiver for exceeding the 3 block. And so then that would attach to this as it moves to the mayor and commission.
Yes.
Is that right? That's the other main priority for me with this site, is that there is some way to get from that, those townhouses on the right of this map, and you got that trail going through there as well. I'm remembering way back when the Classic Center expanded across Hancock Avenue. We basically blocked off Hancock, so you couldn't go down Hancock to, is that Foundry Street down there? That's the one, the back of the Classic Center. That was very correctly very controversial because it really cut down on the grid pattern. And it created a building like the one that you're proposing there that's just so wide that it takes up, gobbles up a couple of blocks, 3 blocks. What the solution that the Classic Center found was to create all pedestrian atrium, a walkway that goes down through their atrium and there's no road access, but a person can walk from Thomas Street down to Foundry. So I'm just throwing that out as a, a potential solution to that problem. I don't think cars need to get through there because you've got plenty of vehicular circulation. But I do think that pedestrians and maybe cyclists walking their bikes through there needs to be something that is, attractive and that connects the east side of that property to the central green. So
That is condition 5 as well, that they have to provide that through that building.
sure is.
And
I circled 3, 2, and 6 on my notes, but yeah.
And I've talked to the designer, Mr. Haynes, and it's a split building, 4-5 split to catch grade to the back. And so, if you enter in off the linear park side, you've got to go up a level to come out on the back. But what they've recommended looking into with us is that publicly accessible bike ped connection and then the utilization, because you're dealing with steps of, I believe you call it a bike track, that is similar to what they did over at the Mark to get to the rail trail, where it's a groove in the middle of the step system that you could roll your bike up and you don't have to bounce it up the steps. And that's what we would be looking at, working with them through this process to make that happen.
Okay, then my concerns are met.
So I still have a couple questions. I was curious about the Belk space. So I guess like the red part now is like the food court and then the Belk is like behind. I mean, I guess I was wondering, is it like all Belk? Is there additional space for retail around the entirety of that building? I was curious how the retail in that building interacted with what was around it.
So I'm sorry, the question was about where Belk is located in the plan currently.
Right, with the Belk building and how the commercial, is it all Belk? Is there additional commercial? How that's split?
It's all Belk. They have a long-term lease there, and so Rice is part of that. So they are remaining in place. Part of that agreement, I do believe, includes some facade improvements. So that's something to mention. But that red that's shown the plan there, where we've outlined it as retail, it's because it's all Belk top, bottom and top floor. And then beyond that, we're looking at programming more office space and some things in addition to retail in the remainder of the
So the red part is
Belk.
It's Belk.
existing Belk?
All Belk.
Yes.
I feel like Belk was on the backside. I'm not sure why I'm thinking of that.
Macy's on the back.
Right, okay. Oh, wow. So then that is going to be office space. I wasn't sure if like office retail was just kind of a classification, but.
If we're looking at those options, I mean, it's open to different configurations, but I'm thinking of it being more that top floor could potentially be more office professional, on the bottom floor could remain some retail.
So that's how that kind of front parking area is servicing Belk. And then
Yes.
behind that is an office space that will just have its own separate entrance or be part of.
It could still be accessed from the top, like stairs will go away, so there is an opportunity then to create an entry and facade in that area. Connection to the parking deck that's internal to that multifamily that's there in that pod, and it switches over parks so that parking could be used for that use.
All right.
A linear park is about where the food court is.
Oh.
Think about it. It's where it goes through.
I guess I'm all turned around. Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, a couple of my questions have been answered and I echo a lot of what's been said. I guess the only thing I wanted to add, so I used to live down in West Palm Beach and we have a project down there called City Place. And when I saw this, it reminded me of it in a way. And just to kind of put a real life take on the size of the buildings. Because I'll be honest, looking through, I was like, whoa, is that really, like, I was going to go back and forth, like, was that really what the building is? In City Place, you have a similar kind of central portion with a road that went down. As a user, we would ditch the car as quickly as we could so we could walk the space. But it was residential above commercial. And it always felt like the people who were kind of on the back sides got left out. because you had to like walk around to get to anywhere. And the blocks were not that long, but they're still kind of long. It just in terms of connecting the neighborhood to the downtown. It was just thinking about, and it did have an effect on downtown because it was so close to downtown. This will be interesting because it does its own new downtown. So yeah, that was my only thought. I love that there are options that we can work with how to break that up and to disperse that. So, thank you.
One more question. I'm sorry, I forgot to do this in my first comments, but just quick question to staff, because I'm familiar with this language and that you usually use in your conditions, but condition number 7, which relates to phase 2. Shall be approved with the density proposed in this application. So I understand the word shall, but should be afforded an opportunity. What's an opportunity to be redesigned to reduce? I mean, I totally, but what does should be afforded an opportunity mean here legally?
What we're looking for with this, especially in phase 2, both A and B, which would be everything in the Sears parking lot wrapping around on the northwest end, as well as the building down near Pep Boys. They're approved for what they're showing you under this condition, and the density and all of that is there. But if we had a developer, if phase 2 starts 4 years from now, and if we had a developer that came in and if 4 years from now, the larger size multifamily building was not as much in style as some other type of building, and they wanted to do more of a mix, and they came to us and said, yeah, I'd really like to do something more than just the large apartment townhouses. How can I make that happen? And if we tell them it's a 6-month zoning amendment, they're just going to do what's there.
Okay, that you answered my
We want to afford them that opportunity if the opportunity presents itself to make it as streamlined as possible to insert more types of housing within that area.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, good strategy.
Excuse me, can I follow on that? Could that also be applied to the green phase?
Green space?
Sorry, the phase 2 or 3 building.
I mean, we've said that with phase 2. I think we've got opportunity within the linear park when we've talked about the programming of the green spaces and the public art. And, you know, if they wanted to get into, for example, if they made a decision to go to 10-foot travel lanes instead of 12, they're probably still meeting the fire lane requirements in that area, but, that's going to be up to fire marshal. But we would do that administratively to work through that as part of the programming of those spaces. I mean, we could tie really any of those changes in the linear park to the continued improvement and design of the linear park by making a travel lane a little less wide if they wanted to do that. So.
Yeah, great. Actually, where were those travel lanes that were 11 feet right now?
I mean, the fire lane's a real issue, though. I mean, that's a good point in terms of the width that they're going to require clear to be able to get in with an aerial apparatus, and it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 25 feet.
And sorry, my previous question was actually just confirming that the buildings that say phase 2 or 3 would be included in that condition that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I had a question for the applicant. I was wondering a little bit about, Kristen hit on something kind of interesting, which is the sense that the back of building 4, that the east side of building 4 feels like the back. And then it's facing, I guess I'm just wondering a little bit about building orientation, like looking at the 2 rows of townhouses on the right-hand side of the site plan. Are those facing each other? You know what I mean?
Sure. This hasn't been said yet, so it's I thank you for the opportunity. The townhomes are all rear loaded. They're all alley loaded. So they're parked in garages and on street. So those townhomes that you're mentioning here have their backs to each other. So the townhomes along Huntington are fronting Huntington, and the ones that are behind that are fronting the building 4.
I guess I'm just wondering, it just seems like on that side of the site, I think the point Kristen was making about it there's this kind of center of gravity on the site, and then there's these other things that I don't know. I don't really understand the benefit of fronting Huntington unless Huntington came to kind of change the nature of that road. Like, in other words, why front Huntington, or why did you all make the decision to have the townhomes have their backs to each other versus like seeing that either as another opportunity for a central green or central space between the two as a townhouse, or just wondering if there's a lot of backs over there. But I guess what you're saying is that the row of townhouses closest to building 4 are facing building 4?
Yes.
Okay, and then is there, but the back of building 4 is even down to the ground level is residential, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so that then becomes kind of an activated space, but primarily residential space.
Correct.
And so is there any, like, what was kind of the conversation around how to make the thing that connects those spaces more than just a road?
Well, there's multi-use path that's in there too. It helps to engage that space a bit. There's a little bit of opportunity for green space between the large building 4 and the townhomes. The decision to front the townhomes on Huntington was largely to try and incorporate the overall plan with the overall neighborhood. We were not going to turn our backs to Huntington. So facing that road was important to us to engage that. That creates sort of a back-to-back scenario with back rear loaded townhomes. Also, those townhomes on Huntington will sit a little higher, that they're closer to the intersection. So you're going to have sort of a step down approach. Those are the only townhomes that actually have basement garages. Is the little cluster that's right there on Huntington. These 2 little clusters. We've got some pretty significant grade change from that part of Huntington. And we got into the site. And then again, as the mall is removed, that was an upper level access to JCPenney's. There's also a 20 feet difference between that and where the center green is. So
if you had those townhomes facing each other, really the ones closest to the road are looking down into the ones.
yeah, we're trying to take advantage of topo and making them splits.
Yeah. Okay, and while you're up there, I had another question. I do really agree with the staff recommendation about pulling the building 3, not having a parking strip be what's between building 3 and the rest of the site. I was wondering about those 2 pedestrian crossings. Are those also raised? So the ones,
They are not in that area.
okay,
They're only ones that are touching the green. The ones that are in the boulevard ring are going to be at grade, but there will be obviously crossings, medians to get there. And we plan on making a pedestrian connection. The code is make a connection to the street, whether that's private or public, from the front door of that facility. So we will be looking to make a connection from that building to there. And obviously we're going to make it safe and not make people walk through cars to do that.
okay. I think that's all my questions. Thanks.
I have a question. I wanted to catch you before you went back down. So I really, I just wanted to take an opportunity while you're here, where there's a lot of people here, and while we're talking about something so important, to just get some more information and kind of an educational question for me that relates back to what Mr. Hall was talking about with the angled parking on the green. Because I saw the angled parking on the green and I thought, parking is the worst thing in the world. Why, oh, why would this happen? And I heard a bit of your answer that I wanted to know more about, which was that, you know, people like parking in the front, people like parking conveniently, understand that. But then what was more interesting to me is that, and I would like to hear more about it, that your potential retail tenants, that your ability to lease out the retail space is connected to parking being put on the street. And I don't know if I heard that right. If I did, could you talk more about the tenant acquisition process and just what considerations for making sure that there are businesses in this retail space and we don't have just big empty retail space? Like, how did that affect your thought process?
I believe the point I'm trying to make is that retailers are going to, tenants for those spaces, they're going to require that there's parking within proximity of their front door.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be pretty standard. And they're going to require a certain amount of parking be available to them throughout the site also, likely as part of their lease agreement. So doing those things without being able to provide those types of things, then your chances of being able to lease those spaces obviously diminished.
That makes sense. And W&A Engineering was brought in for this design, but was not involved with the previous design, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And how long have y'all been involved?
I believe we tabled back in April.
April.
So we came on board slightly, maybe a month before that, or just maybe even short of that, when it was going to be tabled under the second plan that came under Pave Engineering.
Okay, so more than half a year.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it makes sense. And this is a question that is on my mind. If you don't have an answer, I completely understand. Could you estimate the cost of redoing this proposal? How much cost was added to this project? And I'm not saying that it was a bad thing that it was redone. This is wonderful. Again, I want more information, and I want there to be more public information, because I think that in general, there is a big black cloud over y'all's side of things. And when people come in asking for changes, or when we ask for changes, we just have no idea what is the cost. What is the cost of those things? And so since these changes were already made, I thought this would be a good chance to ask for more information, because you won't be coming in and saying like, oh, well, it'll cost us a lot of money to change those things, and making you look like a bunch of jerks. Could you educate us on the cost to change from the first one to this one?
Happily. My name is Mark Jennings, 1547 Legends Drive, Watkinsville, Georgia. I'm a partner in the Living Group, current owner of 2/3 of the mall, and we shall close on the final third, hopefully in the next 6 months or so, provided you guys agree with us. Great question. We are 2.5 years in with our third consultant. First one from Atlanta, second one from Watkinsville, and finally Williams and Associates. Happy to tell you we're about $3 million in on planning. The change cost us about $1.2 million. Already spent.
That is fascinating. And just one more question. I won't keep everyone here all night. Where did those costs go?
Where did they go?
Yeah, was the $1 million?
Not just these two.
Where the $1 million that had to be spent.
In these two, you've got architects, you've got civil, you've got traffic engineers, you've got surveyors, you've got, help me with some of the other consultants. We got stacks and stacks of bills that come from the people who provide the information to answer the questions that you guys asked and that the staff gives to us. When the staff gives us a question, we don't always can't just say, oh, the answer is X. We have to study. We have to study what we have today, what we're proposing, and sometimes in increments of time, like with traffic, to find out what the effect will be 5 years or when it's complete and that kind of thing. So multiple, 15 or 20 vendors, engineers, architects, attorneys.
And where does the cost, if there's an extra $1 million cost that ends up in this project, how does that impact the end result?
So if the end result is negative, meaning you guys don't like it, we lose.
Well, if you win, if everything happens, what is the impact of you having to have spent an extra $1 million?
For a site this size, the impact is positive, because if we are successful, that means that we agree. We agree with all the things that John did and John had changed. We agree with all the things that the community told us that they want changed. And we put that cost into our pro forma, and then we spread it over the lease, over the sales, and over the whole performance of the project.
And there's
That's just
so many things here that particular cost will spread out pretty thin.
It's pretty big.
It's
spread it very, that's
yeah,
correct.
that makes sense.
That's exactly right. When you got this many units and this much footage of commercial and office, you can spread it. That's correct.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I do think that you looked at me and said, where else is the cost? I think it's worth noting though, that like, when we talk about, I mean, you guys are seeing this in plan view, right? I mean, you're seeing a 2D drawing for the most part, and we're answering questions about the slopes and things like that. But anytime we do a plan development, doesn't matter whether it's a 5-acre plan development or a 75-acre plan development, and you ask for a change or there's a change or whatever. I mean, these plan developments get submitted. I mean, we have to engineer them to a point that we know it's going to work because it's a binding plan, right? So everything you see on there, I can build. It can be built. But we know that because we've already done a grading plan. We've already laid out the water lines. We've already done a preliminary storm drain analysis. We've already done a preliminary hydrology. I mean, you see a green blob back there where the detention is. I mean, that's a $25,000 analysis just to make sure that it complies with the code, right? But we can't come up here before you and say that that's where the stormwater pond is if we don't do that, right? Because if we have to change it, guess where we're at? We're right back here. If it doesn't work, if I don't do my job and he doesn't pay me to do my job, then we're gonna come back in here and say, well, sorry, guys, you know, we told you this stormwater pond work like this, but it won't. Or we told you, you know, that part of the reason, and I know staff talked a lot about the street grid systems and stuff, but you know, go drive around the mall. I encourage you. And yeah, we're looking at a flat piece of paper right here. And even if you just look at it, glancing at it going by, you're like, oh, it's a pretty flat site, right? There's a lot of grade out there. And roads can't run but at certain grades. And intersections can't be, or even less grades. And roundabouts are at even less grades. So, you know, the reason why we can't break this thing up more than we have a lot, because I can't take it. You can't just say, well, let's just put a road from top to bottom right here. Because like Scott answered for Sarah, you know, we got 20 foot of grade change between here and here, and a road from there to there doesn't work. So that's why it costs so much. And the more detail we have and then this is a very detailed and very complicated plan that our team spent thousands of hours working on probably collectively to get to the point where we can come before you. I can stand here, Scott can stand here and say, this will work. We can build this. Then there's the cost analysis part of it that these guys had to pay for. I mean, they hired a third-party company to take our plan then and go ahead and do a preliminary cost analysis on it. So we know what it's going to cost. Again, can't afford to come back and go, sorry, guys, this is too expensive, doesn't work. You know, we're going to change it because it's a binding plan. So that's probably more than you wanted to know, but all important.
Yes, no, that is less than I hope to know in the future. And like I said at the beginning, thank you guys for allowing this side way round. I hear a lot of public comment. I hear a lot of public input that makes sense. That it just makes sense that no one really knows everything that y'all do and all the steps that go into this. So public, you know, coming forward saying we should do it like this. This would be better. And then it doesn't happen like that. And then the automatic assumption all the time is that, you know, the people building this just don't care, don't want something, you know, they don't care. They're all in it for the money. And that's the only reason they didn't do it. And just, I'm happy to have seen some light shed on a little bit of the complexity of a project like this.
Thank you for that. I normally keep my seat and not speak in these unless I'm spoken to first. But I think since I'm here, I will tell you, this is my 35th year in real estate development, lifelong resident of Athens, Oconee County, 15 or so subdivisions in Athens-Clarke County with Brad over the last 20 or 25 years. This is a transformational project. There's nothing like this ever in this market. And it competes with some of the transformational projects going on in Atlanta. Athens, Atlanta. I mean, it is that scale of project. So we understand that. That's why we are willing to go the extra mile to stop and do it right before we present it to you guys the second time. And we really appreciate what Brad and staff have done. They met with us in here and other places several times since we've seen you guys in March or whenever it was. And we really appreciate and we agree that the complexity of this project lends to having those shells and mays so that we can work together and keep it going. And that's what we do it from this point. Thank you, guys.
So I guess just a comment and then we make a motion, I promise. I was thinking about the drive-in, with the 2 lanes and, what we're doing here. I mean, we're kind of creating a new downtown. And months ago, gosh, maybe years ago, we looked at the Atlanta Highway Corridor Study, right? And we looked at the mall and it was like, this could be a commercial node. We were like, man, it'd be really great to really think about how this mall project could be done. And I was really excited when this new plan came out. And, those little streets, I mean, we have 3 lanes in our downtown right now and we cross the streets and we got cars parked pulling out and people are looking for parking, I mean, it's kind of incredible, we have some roundabouts, they're going to slow down some stuff. And I mean, we could pick at it all day, but I mean, honestly, this is kind of a cool opportunity. And I guess what I wanted to do is just say this is really an opportunity to create a showpiece. So it's kind of like, all right, gauntlet thrown, go create something really cool, create cool roundabouts and cool architecture and make us want to come and just walk around for several hours. So, and obviously shop, I guess. So with that, I would like to propose, make a motion to approve project. Is that what we're doing here? Are we approving this?
With the staff conditions.
With the staff conditions, yes.
And Matt seconded. Any further discussion? I guess I'm just not really clear on whether all of the staff conditions are something that the applicant agrees to or can do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
They're fine.
Because they're worded in a way.
Very grateful for that,
Okay.
from staff.
Okay. Further discussion?
I had one more comment, and I guess to give my overall impression, I'm really happy that so much good residents and input was incorporated into this. Building 4, despite the condition, seems just very massive. Is that condition 2, the 3-acre block maximum?
Yes.
Okay,
They have to get a waiver.
so it's possible if that's not given to break it up, or is that how that works?
That wasn't, that seems like the question you're asking sounds like the question that I was getting at the beginning. And my understanding was that it wouldn't be broken up as in completely different structures, but that the idea is that it will be broken up with paths through.
It was basically, it was our solution at this point in the project
I see.
to address the cross connection between the building without saying that you've got to go back. And if you didn't grant that waiver, it's a complete redesign of this whole thing in more than a couple of areas. And we felt like there were better opportunities, given the overall scope of the project, to at least get the connection. And
All right, yeah, that's enough for me too. I will say, just to nitpick, some of those, I think it is a very long elevation, even with the path, and I think the north and south are pretty uninviting. One is just walls, right, without any openings.
Building 4.
Yeah, building 4.
Yeah.
Does that count under architectural?
yes, as they continue to finalize architecture.
Okay, great.
Yes, it gives us the flexibility to agree and allow that to occur, working with them without somebody coming in and saying, whoa, this doesn't look like that elevation. Should have taken that back through the zoning process.
Got it.
We're trying to keep it moving and improving as it goes because it's such a massive project. The details will continue over the next 5 to 7 years of work on this.
Yeah, I just didn't know what level of detail was, included under architecture. Same with the ground level windows.
Same as the rear, the northern elevation where the police precinct is.
Okay.
If they want to come in and make significant changes to that elevation from what's there today, they can without coming back.
Great, well then I would, ready to vote on the,
I know.
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Taylor.
I just like to say that I think we all agree that we need more housing. And we need more housing that represents the missing middle, which I think the staff done a good job, and I think developers do a good job of creating that space. I think this plan could be the answer that Athens is looking for, Clarke County. I know that we talk about creating a new downtown, but I look at that a little different. I hope we're not creating a new downtown. I hope we're creating a space that's more inclusive for the community. Because I think that the success and longevity of this project is monumental for the people that will be in this area. And I think that the developers are doing a good job with it. And I trust that the staff, I think they'll get it right.
Scott, was there something that you wanted to say with regard to building 4 or?
I was just gonna be available for answers, but I think that
Okay.
answers were had.
Okay, any?
We've got a motion in a second.
Yep, any?
Seconded it.
Matt?
Ready to vote?
Oh, yeah.
You just saying that.
Okay, we'll do roll. So we're ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote.
Roll call. Gary,
Yes.
Goodrum,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Morales.
Yes. Oh, you forgot Taylor.
Right. That passed.
Excellent. Okay.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay,
Hey, Brad. Maybe and the zoning, do they have vote?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Just as a technicality, that was a motion. We needed another motion.
Portion at the top.
No, yeah, we need a land use map amendment.
So moved.
Motion to approve in a second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
Thank you,
Who was the second?
Matt. Alice, Matt.
Next item, 600 and 660 West Broad. We'll start with the staff report.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully this will be a little bit shorter this time. We have a proposal for 4 parcels here. The addresses are in front of you, 600, 660 West Broad Street, 363 Reese, and 0 North Finley. Please. The applicant has requested to rezone 4 parcels from commercial general and RM2, mixed density residential, to commercial downtown with planned development. This project would include a pedestrian plaza, restaurant, and retail space at the ground level, outdoor dining, and public amenities on the West Broad facing section of this building, which is the longest portion of this building. It would also include 22 one-bedroom residences and 213 two-bedroom units, so 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Additionally, it has almost 500 parking spaces and a parking deck that is both at grade and subgrade, and then improves the landscaping within and around Reese and Pope Park. The applicant is requesting a waiver to shorten, we require ground floor commercial in downtown and in commercial zones, and they are requesting to do less of that than what the code would require. So that is what that waiver is about. Next slide, please. This is the location of the property. You can see the 4 parcels here. West Broad is the major street running right through the slide there. You can see downtown is to the east or to the right on this picture. And then you have Millage is off, you're headed towards Millage as you move on the left here. We would be changing the future land use here. We have mixed, we have Main Street business and traditional neighborhood existing, that's on the left. And then it would shift to downtown. As you can see, Finley Street right now is basically the border between downtown and this neighborhood here right now. Staff thinks that it makes sense to reconsider as we have some aging commercial along this portion of West Broad, and Athens is growing, to potentially reconsider the land use on this corridor. So that is a moment that we would like to see debated here with the Planning Commission. Next slide, please. It would, the existing zoning on the left is commercial general and RM2. You would also note that it is in the Reese Street Historic District, both a national and local one. And then on the right, it would move to commercial downtown with the planned development there. This is an overview of the site plan. You can see the park is on the top left corner there. The building would run the length of West Broad between, I believe that is at Finley and Pope Street there. So that would cover that entire frontage and then create an L-shaped building there on Finley. We went out and took some photos of existing conditions on the site. This is, I believe, from Reese Street. And then this is the commercial here. As you can see, it's not really up to the design standards that we would expect now. It's not really a great place for folks to walk. It's not particularly attractive at this point. So there's an opportunity here to reconsider development and what the future of this parcel is. Next slide. Same here. See more aging buildings here on this property. This is the stream in question. This is Tanyard Creek. It is piped on either side of this block. It also runs underneath Sanford Stadium and through the UGA campus. As you can see, there's a lot of kudzu and invasive species there. It's an impaired stream. It's not in great shape, but since piping the stream is a huge part of the question for this development, this is what it looks like. This is our rendering. This would be the front facing West Broad. I believe this is a little bit different angle there, but the same side here. As you can see, it's a very large, long building along that entire block face. This is looking at it from the back. Reese Street there is on, you can see the park there and closest to you, and the building would create this L-shaped structure moving away from there. The applicant would need to pipe the stream, and then they're proposing building on top of that pipe. In this scenario, you can see there's some mini spaces and some on the roof and some improvements to the park there that are planned to be made as part of this project. This gives you a good idea of what the size and scope of this building is. It's a very large one. And then this would be what you would see as you're driving out on to turn on the West Broad from Pope. Our staff report right now notes that the request is inconsistent with our current future land use and zoning maps. That's why they're requesting changes to the future land use and zoning maps. We do think that, as I mentioned previously, as Athens grows, as this commercial corridor here ages, that there's an opportunity to reconsider the future land use of this area. We would also note that there is a mixed bag of consistency with the comprehensive plan policies. We do note that it is consistent with increasing the supply of housing, building on infill locations, which helps our traffic situation and makes better use of our infrastructure. We would also see improved access to green space here, a chance to fix up the park a little bit and clean up a space that's maybe deteriorated a little around that stream. It is inconsistent with the comp plan in that it adds a lot of they're adding a lot of parking above and beyond what they would be required to do so. So we're increasing vehicles downtown. Our comp plan calls for decreasing the vehicles downtown. And piping a stream is not really consistent with our desire in the comp plan to protect our natural resources, particularly around downtown. Right now, staff does not support the waiver request because the waiver request is made in part because of the extra parking. So we would like to see them reduce some of that parking and perhaps give themselves a chance to comply with the code without needing the waiver. And then staff also does not support piping the stream. Without piping the stream, the project basically cannot be built, and ACC does not support that. That is an ongoing discussion with various departments, with the state. And so right now, this is a receipt of comments. We're not making a recommendation at this point. It is in the preliminary plan development stage. So it is open for discussion tonight, and that concludes the staff report.
Okay, applicant?
Hi, my name is Brett Nave, 200 Plum Valley, and I'm with Studio B&A Architects. Good to see everybody again. So can you go to the third rendering? Thank you. Yeah, appreciate everybody's time and really interested to hear input. And I'm going to share my time. If you can maybe help me at about 5, Ed's going to come.
I'll let you know.
Thank you. So this is actually a really fun project for us. As you heard, it's, you know, the parcel, we're all used to driving by it. We've seen it and it's kind of in need. Our thought, and it's kind of how we like to do things when we can in our studio. We really like the idea of blurring pedestrian and landscape and inside and outside. And we feel like downtown it needs to grow. We need to keep going. We've got so many great things going on. And if we can continue to invigorate and revive some of these older properties that really can't be developed based on their, you know, current situations, monetary situations, stream buffer in this very brief instance, which Ed talked with you about. We love the idea of being able to bring people together inside, outside, outdoor dining, expanding a park that it's a pretty wonderful amenity. I don't even know how much we can do, but we're really hoping we can do a lot. What we've proposed here is kind of the beginnings of what we would like to do there. As you can read, all 1s and 2 bedrooms, we're looking at Class A commercial and restaurant space. It's about 34,000 square feet here. And we've designed it very specifically to not have those deep, dead retail spaces that you see in some of what I would call big box student housing, or also to minimize it and say, hey, give us everything. We don't really want to do retail because we're here for something else. We actually do want to do this commercial and restaurant space. And so it's similar to, many of you were here when we worked on Mathis together, and, you know, Mathis was kind of tired, and now it's Mathis Apartments in 5 Points. It was kind of tired, and now it's, you know, filled up with Biddy and Bose and ZZ and Simone's, and it's invigorating. And I think that, you know, the residents really came together behind us there. And so it's hard to imagine change sometimes. And sometimes if it looks big, we think, oh gosh, that's too big. But, you know, downtown, as we just heard, is, what was it? 90 acres is downtown, and 75 acres is what we just listened to, or you guys participated in. This is under 3 acres, and we're trying to keep as much of it green. And in fact, unlike normal CD or downtown projects, we're really trying to add a lot of landscape so that it's an engaging, vibrant street front. And we have 2 places where you can pass through the building. You're looking at one right here. It goes to the backside, and about 2/3 of the way down, you see our rendering kind of has changed its brighter color. That's an accident, but right about there is another pass through. And then we're, of course, creating sidewalk and landscape all the way around. So I'm going to stop because Ed has a lot of things to talk about.
I've got 6 minutes left.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Lane with Smith Planning Group. I live at 1171 Keeneland Drive. Thank you, Brett. I wanted to speak to just a few additional items related to this site that I know are big deals. So first, the stream. As the staff report notes, you know, piping a stream is something to be very carefully considered. It's actually not that uncommon to do, you know, if you go through the permitting process, but in Athens, it's pretty uncommon, and that's probably something to be commended, a feature, not a bug of Athens. And this watershed, so I think it was in 2001, the city produced a pretty detailed report, 68-page report analyzing this watershed, that it was heavily impaired, and kind of a roadmap to how do we over time get this to be a healthy contributing watershed to the Oconee River. In that report, it outlined what it called identification of management needs. And there were various different prescriptions there of what different sites could do to address this over. This application actually meets 3 of those recommendations, which were extended detention, infiltration practices, and sewer line replacement, which on this side site, there's a lot of utility lines running through there. And actually, there's an interference where the storm line has a sewer line that actually goes directly through it. Okay? And so this would be, the private developer would be repairing that infrastructure. On the other hand, in order to do any of this, it requires the redevelopment of the site, and we are proposing the piping of the stream to do that. And so the one additional thing to consider there is the health of the buffer. If you're evaluating the trade-offs of piping this, and is it a net benefit to the water quality? Well, as you can see in the picture that staff provided, and if you're familiar with this area, I would say the term 75-foot buffer is in code and ordinance parlance only. What is there is eroded. The kudzu has kind of choked off all of the other growth that would help to buffer it. And the stream is not benefiting from the typical benefits of a 75-foot buffer because it's in a highly urbanized area. And so what we were proposing in our justification for it was evaluating the trade-offs here, that this is the kind of the final stretch of this creek that is not piped, and it is overwhelmed with what's around it in terms of impervious area, the utilities, and everything going there, that by adding the water quality treatments that would be part of the site, the detention, and fixing all of the utilities, and then finally piping it, it would be a net benefit to this watershed, in addition to net benefit to Athens. Now, as was alluded there, we're working with staff to try to understand the local procedures for how this would be done with abandoning the buffers, because what we typically do in municipalities, or our understanding of it, is from the water line, if you want to call the water line in, is the Army Corps jurisdiction. From the water edge out 25 feet is the state. And then beyond that, municipalities can add additional buffers. And so we have spoken to the EPD about supporting the buffer variance on this project. And just in a cursory review of what we submitted, they seem to agree that this would be the type of case that they would support that variance. Same with the Army Corps. None of that is official by any means. I don't want to project that, but usually we try to gauge the feel for that. So they seem to think like this was, they could probably support it. And so if those permits are acquired, essentially the stream goes away, it's piped. The Army Corps, there is no more jurisdiction, and the state has no more jurisdiction. Our understanding is the local buffers then disappear by default. For example, where this is piped on this site, and it continues under Finley and on the Lincoln Ventures site that is under construction, that's the same stream. And that was just rerouted with no hearings board, and because there are no buffers on it. So essentially, if the stream gets piped, there are no buffers. And so, but there, we're still not totally clear on that, and we're working with Public Works and staff to understand what would be required here locally, but that was our intent. The added complication here is that part of the pipe is actually on Athens-Clarke County land, and the EPD and the Army Corps require those applications to be by the owner of the land. So the developer is, of course, willing to apply for both of those to obtain it, but whereas the developer here may have the right to, if it wasn't this project, do a by right project, get those permits and pipe it, he cannot do that on the the county's land, and then unless they supported that and allowed it as part of the project. So there's a lot of moving parts there, but I did just want to explain how we're working through that. And if you have any questions, of course, Brett and I are here available to answer anything you may have. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone in public who wishes to speak in favor of this project? Okay, and anyone here speak in opposition? Go ahead.
My name's Sidney Kushner. I live on 178 Deering Street. My home is in the historic district and it overlooks this particular property. We have a very nice view across Broad Street to the hills on the other side. This building does not fit in either side. On the other side of the building is the Hill Street Baptist Church, which is, I don't know whether it has any historical it does have significant historical perspective. On nice days, on Sunday, we hear the church choir. This building is going to completely blot out the view from Deering Street, looking across Broad Street. And it's another massive building. There's the William. There's this new massive building that they're putting up with God knows how many apartments that has like a 7 or 8 story parking garage that's all concrete. It just does not make sense to put in another massive building that's going to house students. Okay. They're 1 and 2 bedroom units. They're going to house students. Doesn't matter what they price them. There are a lot of students in this town who can afford pretty much anything. And it's a very convenient location, but I just think it's out of place to put something of that structure. It's going to be right up against Broad Street. It's going to blot out the light. From our perspective, it's just an awful idea to put something in like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gil Hurley. I'm here representing the historic Reese Street District. We are concerned about the scale of the Finley Pope project. The park is located at the juncture of Reese and Pope. It's integral to the community and has historic significance. It is the site of the Knox Institute, which is the first school in Athens for African Americans, founded in 1868, with Hill First Baptist Church across the street, founded in 1867, only 2 years after emancipation. The neighbors of the historic Reese have the following concerns in regards to the development. Parcels currently zoned for traditional or commercial neighborhoods use should not be amended to downtown zoning without consideration from the community. It will have a negative effect on the historic district. The same careful consideration that has been given to other historic districts when development has been bought should be considered regarding the Reese Historic District. The project includes four parcels, 2 of which are within the locally and nationally designated historic district and therefore must be developed according to the guidelines of the historic district. The design of the building is a large block building that should be broken down into smaller pieces, which will soften the intrusion into the neighborhood, particularly in the rear part of the building. The park is not owned by the city and therefore cannot be granted for development. Athens-Clarke County was granted authority to develop the lot as a park for the benefit of families. We suggest creating a review committee committee of all stakeholders to promote a plan everyone can agree on for this gem of a neighborhood. Stakeholders should include representatives from the Hill First Baptist Church and the Historic District residents. We understand that there will be development. However, we want to make sure that the development stays within the design guidelines of the historic district and is not intrusive to the walkability and playground and parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Mabel Mitchell. I live at 105 Bar H Court, Athens, 30605. I'm a member of Hill First Baptist Church. We are writing in opposition to the proposed development for the plans for Finley and Cope. We do understand that the site will be developed. However, we are concerned about the scale of the project and the negative effect that it will have on the local, historical, and national designation of Reese Street Historic District. The Reese Street Historic District contains Hill First Baptist Church and many prized elements of a historic walkable district. The neighborhood maintains a sense of place, trees, walkability, and a close-knit community. Anchored by the church and the African-American heritage, it is our hope that the Finley Pope Street development will maintain sensitivity to the integrity of the historic African-American neighborhood and the playground and park that is walkable to the children and the families living in the historic Reese Cobb communities. The current plan does not support the playground district. We have the following concerns, and they have been outlined earlier about the two parcels that are in this district. Also about the fact that the city does not own the playground. And there are just other things that should be considered before we go ahead with this project. So we kindly ask for the consideration of the committee. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Deetra Bonner, and I reside at 324 Crab Apple Trace, and I'm here with Hill First Baptist Church, and I present three concerns or three asks. One, we want to ensure that the playground remains intact for public use. Additionally, we do not want to lose the green space or the Tanya Branch stream. Thirdly, we want to propose redesigning the building to feature smaller sections that will make it less visually imposing and help the neighborhood maintain its quaint aesthetic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in opposition to this application?
Hi, Liz DeMarco, 327 Hill Street. And I want to support the previous speakers. I agree with everything that they've said. I think that this design is not appropriate. Well, first of all, I think that ask for rezoning this commercial downtown is should be denied. It's just an inappropriate zoning for this, and it needs, like Brett made reference to the Mathis. The Mathis, I don't think they're as high. I think they're 3 stories maximum, and that they are also broken up. But overall, this design does not address the historic neighborhoods to either side of it and all around it. We need to stop the downtown density, that level of density right in that area. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Can I say something?
Sure.
My name is Donald Champion. I'm the chairman of the Deacon Board at Hill Free Baptist Church. I reside at 615 China Bay Avenue, Jefferson, Georgia. I listened to the proposal and the diagram there. And on Sunday, we have service. Have anybody thought about the traffic that they're going to impose on to in and out of there? And sometimes we have service in the evening time. And eventually when the COVID go back, we go back to Bible study doing revival. The project right here, what you're looking at is massive. It's historic Baptist church here. It's been here for a long time. So I would like for the people just really think about, the church as a whole. It's prominent in the community. And I think it would be I think we can look at a better way of doing this. You can't stop progress, ain't no way around it. Probably ain't gonna happen. But we still need to save Hill Free Baptist Church. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Edward Thomas. I reside at 135 Silver Circle. I grew up in that neighborhood. I was born right below Parker there. I know everybody that grows up in there. I even played with the people up on Dairy Street, John Q. West, and all them boys up there. We got that park from, we used to be on corner Reed Street and not Reed Street, Newton Street and Hancock. That's where we had park first. My junior year, I went down to Mr. Dooley and asked him, when they moved that park, could they give us another place to have a park? He said, where would you like to have it at? I said, across the street from the church. They gave us a green box and gave me the key. And that's where the parks originated started from. I would hate to see us lose the park and all the kids that go there and play there, because I played there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Does the applicant wish to take their 2 minutes to respond to public comment?
Just like to say thank you to everybody. I'm supposed to look this way, but thank you to everybody for your comments, and we're here to listen and learn from everybody, so appreciate it.
Okay, and before we go to planning commission discussion, just to remind everyone that tonight we are not taking a vote on this particular application. This is comments only, so this is the first of 2 times that we're going to see this. So this is the chance for planning commission and staff to give the applicant to listen to the public and to listen to our feedback. Okay. Kristen?
Right. So I don't really have comments as far as the design of the building goes. I mean, looking at it on paper, it's a beautiful building. My issue is the location of the building. Never mind, like, when we saw the William, that's not the William, and also the one that was next to it, that ended up not having to go through this process. Our comments for both of those buildings was to step it back from the neighborhood. Like, as it was at Finley Street, which is not a very big dividing line between, like, say, commercial and like a neighborhood. As it is, we were already like, whoa, step it back, like we're encroaching on this neighborhood. But I also can't, it's hard for me to also ignore the fact that, like, like, I don't know how to say this properly, but we have brought this on ourselves in that this neighborhood, for no good reason, as far as I could ever see, is zoned multifamily. It is a single family neighborhood. Broad Street was a single family neighborhood. Historically, 100 years ago, Broad Street had houses on it. We made the road wider. We made people leave this neighborhood. We zoned it as commercial. So to say that downtown has to like move down, no, we disrupted a neighborhood to create more commercial space. And so now we have, I mean, it's ironic, we just talked about the mall and how we basically created zoning to create this new commercial space. And look, it's what happened. Like, this is how zoning works. And so now we have this coming into a neighborhood that, I mean, honestly, it's a single family neighborhood. Like, we should not have multifamily, like, building into this neighborhood. And so I'm a little worked up because it's just, I mean, this is, we brought this on ourselves. This is what happens. We created the zoning. We invited all of this to come down the street. I mean, sure, the two buildings that are along Broad are not the prettiest buildings, but I mean, that's what happens when you just kind of like push people out of the way and just like put up whatever you want. And so anyway, I have a severe problem with putting this building in this space. So obviously that's what you're going to get from me. Thank you.
Anyone else?
You know, Kristen was very articulate on those comments. I do think that when you're, you know, most of us, if we're driving into downtown, we're going to be on Broad Street. We're not going to cut through on Reese Street. So you know, you tend to think of this property as what it looks at toward Broad Street, and obviously what's there now is really unattractive. We've talked for years about the desire to, you know, make zoning or you know, develop better between essentially, I guess CD goes down to Newton, is that right? Finley, okay. I always get those two mixed up. You know, we've talked for years about, you know, how to sort of gently improve development along that stretch of Broad, especially going up to Millage and then ideally out to Hawthorne. I've got some of the I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm grateful for the public comment that reminds us that there is just one block off what is, even though it's not zoned that way right now, it is used as a single family neighborhood. In terms of design, and I heard one of the commenters say this, that even on the Broad Street side, the building is so long. It feels really massive. So I would be interested in ways that maybe that facade doesn't have to be continuous. I do appreciate the you know, the pass-throughs. And I do have one question to include in my comments for staff. Remind me how tall and how dense could a residential be in CG as it's currently mostly zoned, not all of it, but most of it?
65 feet tall and 24 bedrooms per acre.
Okay, and what we have here is 176 per acre, and how tall?
I don't know the height of this building, but it could be as tall as 100 feet in commercial downtown.
So, you know, I guess there's the part of me that is the person who drives along Broad Street every day to get to my office, and, you know, would love to see something much more attractive there. And, you know, I give the developer credit that I think there's a lot of attention to detail there, you know, all the way around the property. But so there's that part of me that says I would really love to see something like this here as opposed to what's there. But then there's the other part of me that lives in a neighborhood, a historic neighborhood myself, and this one is even older. The sort of the fact that there's no real meaningful way to buffer between those neighborhoods unless design can figure it out, you know, how to step it down, step it back. Definitely work closely with the community and especially the Hill Chapel. It's not Hill Chapel, it's Hill.
Hill First.
Thank you, Hill First. I get it confused with the other one down the street. Thank you, Hill First. So those are my concerns. Both my praise and my concerns. I hope I was articulate enough for you to take some notes on that, but it's a fraught question in my mind. Truly, we want things better on Broad Street. Truly, we want sensitivity to the neighborhood that's right behind it. It is a lot of density.
Katie? I'm going to start with general zoning comments that seem to be in the nature. Honestly, I don't know what impact the Historic Preservation Commission would have on this. I don't know what their level of power is. I just have no idea. I'm going to skip over it. I generally think that residential historic districts, as they are legally defined right now, are a detriment to society because they do not allow growth in any way. And what ends up happening is that we have so many historic districts all over town of varying different kinds, given varying different kinds of consideration, that when we have the necessity for growth, which we do because we have, the population increasing everywhere all the time. Nothing grows at all in the historic districts. And then giant cataclysmic growth happens right on their edges, which doesn't do anyone any good anyway, which is not anything that the developer can do anything about. And it's not anything that anyone here has done. Just wanted to point that out, that it makes it very difficult to have that buffer. Speaking of which, I think it's ridiculous that we go from commercial general having a maximum residential density of 24 bedrooms per acre, very small number. And then the only way you can go up is to commercial downtown, which has 200 bedrooms per acre. This applicant is really pushing on the edges of. I think that it makes sense to have a downtown in this area, but it can't be at the height of downtown. It does have to consider the scale around it. So I think that more than 24 bedrooms per acre makes sense, but all the way up to 200. You get a lot of problems, clearly. So I hope that this applicant really takes advantage of the community. I think that there is a lot of potential for collaboration and development so that this can be an asset to the Reese Historic District. It can be an asset, a resource. And I do want to point out that 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments are what we are always asking for, because when proposed developments come in with 3- and 4-bedroom apartments, that is generally considered to be the sign that it is only for students, because only students are going to live in those little 4-bedroom pods. And so it would be nice to have places where people who aren't students can live, people a little bit older, more in the community, people who aren't necessarily wanting to live in senior housing, but also aren't necessarily wanting to live in a single family home, but also definitely don't want a roommate. I see a lot of potential there. And as much as I am a big fan of density, I hope that y'all are able to meet in the middle. Katie?
Yeah, thanks a lot of that. I think first and foremost for me is the fact that part of this property is in the historic district, which was created to protect the historic community and the historic district and its character. And that's always going to come first to me. This kind of development, I think anywhere, almost anywhere else on the Atlanta Highway would be a massive, massive improvement. I think it's very appropriate to, to retrofit our corridors that just have this small scale commercial. But in this case, I think the historic neighborhood is the priority. And the height and bulk of this in particular could be, it just isn't appropriate, especially given the fact that it's so visible with the grade changes from the community. And I want to note that the park, this might be just me, but it should feel like it belongs to the community. And I feel like having 5-story apartments looming over it, maybe you would cut into that. I'm not sure. I hope there could be a design solution for that. So I guess I'd want to second what people have said, for there to be a dialogue with community stakeholders to figure out a solution where some housing can be added. And again, somewhere in between the downtown scale in our current zoning and the commercial, while respecting the historic neighborhood and its form.
Yeah, so there's a lot that I like about the building. I mean, echoing what some other folks have said, that, it's a stylish building. I think we need more downtown spaces. We need more restaurant spaces. I like the interaction between the kind of inside, outside, the restaurant spaces with the patios and all that is good. And it's sort of a perennial problem that the good restaurants downtown go out of business because rent's $9,000 a month. And rent's $9,000 a month because there's not very many spaces to put good restaurants downtown. And so if we had more of them, then I think more of those businesses could succeed, and that would be great. So yeah, I agree with part of what Katie just said, that this building somewhere on West Broad, thumbs up all the way. I think generally speaking, our corridors need to have much higher density. And I think that what is on this parcel is decrepit and horrible looking. And so I'd love to see something built on this parcel. And what I heard the neighbors say is they understand progress is coming. They also want to see something built on this parcel. And it sounds to me like maybe a path forward, maybe the path forward for the developer is to have a meeting with the Baptist Church and the neighborhood more broadly, and have more of a kind of interactive back and forth about the kind of development that they would feel less concerned about, but that also serves the developer's need to make the project pencil out, and that also serves Athens' need for more housing and for more stylishly designed retail spaces. So there's a lot that I like about it, but I do have some concerns here, and I would feel a lot better about something that the developer brought back that had some of these same folks here saying, they listen to us and we appreciate this, and this is better. We like it. If that's possible, that would be great. I don't know if it is, but I would encourage the developer to try it.
I have a couple comments. One of them we haven't talked about very much, that Mr. Lane talked about with his dream. I know for me that, I wouldn't want to recommend approval of something until you came back with that kind of indication from EPD or whoever that process needs to look like. Because I do actually see what you're saying in that there are some things that you all might be proposing to do on the site that do fit within the best management practices for Tangent Creek. And so, that's a pretty persuasive argument to me, but I would just need to see that the logistical sort of regulatory piece is sorted out. I have the same concerns as everyone else about scale. I think this is a good example. Sarah pointed it out about there's that missing zoning category between CG and CD in terms of density. But I actually think that CG and like in my view, CD zoning ending at, I guess that's Finley, has always, that makes sense to me. And so pushing past that, I'm less of, and I think that the CG zoning is actually appropriate there. And so when I think about, like, this is, it's a beautiful looking development. It's just this, I think for me, it's a scale. So, you know, right now the CG zoning allows for 65 feet, which I know is a much smaller building, but listening to what neighbors have to say, maybe that is that, and kind of listening to some of the other input is the way to get that transition that people seem to want. And it's just so massive. And I wonder also, I was looking in your plan about, I didn't see anything about any affordable units, but it might be worth considering, you know, having a look at the new inclusionary zoning plan, because that could be a way to maybe add some density into a CG. Staying with CG, but adding density. I can't remember exactly how that would.
You get 100%.
100, it would take it to 48 an acre instead of 24.
Yes,
That doesn't sound terrible.
And that's automatic.
Mhm.
They could also
By
do
right.
PD,
Yeah.
they would ask for.
Yeah, so that's something I would recommend considering, whether that could get you a little more density with the CG zoning. And then there was one other thing. So I'm assuming, I don't know, I know that the two parcels in this, on this block that are historic, that are part of the historic district have just single family homes on them. Is that right? Or is one of them multifamily? I don't know what the deal is with those two houses. But I think that, yeah, just, I don't see much in the plan that kind of sort of, I mean, in some ways, those houses being right there on the block gives us opportunity to have to immediately think about the transition into the neighborhood. So anyway, I just think, thinking, I don't know if I'm saying anything new, but just thinking about that transition. We talked a lot about that when we were talking about the varsity property and trying to get, you know, I don't know if we got that right, but just trying to, in that case, it was kind of stepping back as you went into the setback to try to honor that transition a little bit better into the neighborhood. But here the park gives us kind of interesting, natural way to do that. And so I'm really encouraged by the feedback that you all got tonight from the neighbors and the members of the church. And I think that would be really worth pursuing that conversation and just seeing if there's a way to design the park that, I think there's some design solutions to almost everything I'm talking about. So anyway, I'll leave my comments with that, but it's a beautiful plan. I'm just worried about the bulk of it.
One more quick comment. I noticed the, on page 8, the rendering of the street level retail. I looked in the report that y'all sent, and I was encouraged by language about innovative retail, making me think that this might be something where smaller businesses, local businesses could thrive. But I only see 3 spaces here, 3 giant bigger ones. And so maybe I'm reading the map wrong, entirely possible. But I would hope to see some subdivision of that retail space on a plan. Just because I don't think that large retail spaces, entirely large retail spaces, is going to be conducive to the mix and innovative, the mix of innovative retail that y'all were hoping to get. I think that you need something smaller sometimes, not all of them.
I agree with pretty much everything that everybody has said so far. So I don't really want to piggyback on it, but I will say, I mean, you're coming down Broad and that space is tight over there. With that size of a building. I know it would have to be scaled down if it was to go through. But because I just don't see how traffic is gonna flow coming off Broad right there. Just because it's already, I think Broad is a terrible street, especially between
Amen.
7 o'clock, 7 and 9 and 3 and 7. But I just don't, I mean, I don't think it's, I really don't think there's a need to continue to extend downtown into residential areas, residential neighborhoods. I mean, I'm for growth, but I do think that we should try to keep our identities, allow our neighborhoods to keep their identities. Become a classic city. I think that we should continue to try to keep our historic areas classic. If anything, help to build those historic areas and preserve them, make them look better. So I think we should talk with the churches. Good things go through the church. Sure that they will be able to help guide you in a direction that would be acceptable with the neighbors and with the community. I don't think that they're totally against growth. I think they'll be able to help.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on parking as some staff rightly focused on. It's a lot of parking, and I would possibly ask the applicant what their reasoning is behind adding unrequired parking, given the great expense of structured parking. Because I've harped on before, it's usually at least $25,000 a space. So that necessarily adds to the cost of rent in this building. And I don't know, I mean, what else could be done with that investment? I don't know, the financing. I know neighbors are often concerned about, the idea that not enough parking will lead to more traffic on neighborhood streets. I would say there are parking management approaches that could be enacted instead, especially if we're looking at the kind of money, just think about $25,000 each parking space. So yeah, I would love to see a lot less parking. I feel like every parking space downtown is another car on the roads, which we don't need. Yeah, as Sarah said, 1 or 2 bedrooms is great. I think that's more usable in the long run than the exclusively student oriented programs. I think it's already been said, but this stream, I would say the 75-foot buffer is kind of a blunt. I'm open to more urban solutions that have a positive impact on water quality. But the burden of showing that on the applicant. And I guess there are also a lot of other utilities issues that are maybe also quite serious. And I think there was something else. Oh yeah, Broad Street, not necessarily for the applicant, but yeah, in general, that's a terrible right-of-way design. I know GDOT is mostly to blame, but 2 lanes in each direction is one of the most dangerous formats. There's no buffering between the sides of the road. Just putting it out there for future consideration.
If I thought Kitty was asking the applicant what the story is on parking, but if not, I would like to ask the applicant that.
Great.
So the general critique on parking, I mean, we agree with. Donald Shoup and the high cost of free parking and all of that, I think we understand that. The reason that it's parked this much here is several different things. But one, because it is on that edge of downtown, where it is a neighborhood and street grid there. The thought is, whereas downtown, you find a spot, it's kind of shared parking all over, and there's public parking and paid parking. Here it's on the edge, what we thought is for these businesses and the residents, if we are not providing adequate parking, there's a much higher chance that those people will now find a parking space somewhere in this neighborhood. And so being on that edge, we wanted to make sure we were providing for that. And then in addition, parking is notoriously hard to kind of model or predict what's going to be high demand, low demand. And we were just had kind of our this is just with us on the I'll talk about the developers kind of market study, but for us, we've seen that Athens has had a lot of growth in the last 10 years, continuing to have a lot of growth downtown. Was speaking to David Lynn with the Athens Downtown Development Authority just yesterday. He said that they kept a wait list of people that were contacting them to pay for parking and to lease parking, essentially. And he said the list grew so long of that wait list that they have stopped taking names. And so the general critique, I understand, and am of that same line of thought, but it would be helpful if planning staff or someone had some data to show that our downtown, Athens downtown, has a surplus of parking that is, causing it to be cheaper than it should be. And because what we are seeing with what our developer clients tell us on their market studies, and then some of the data points that I've, just intuitive data points, is that we don't have enough because of the adjustment being made to downtown right now. And then, I mean, we can probably just testify to our own experiences. Like when I go downtown, I often have to circle around looking for paid parking. It doesn't deter me ever because I know I'll find one eventually, but I'm circling around downtown until I find one. And in a way that can contribute to more traffic, because if I was efficiently able to find paid parking at market rates, I wouldn't need to circle around. So there's just some added complexities there, and that's why we went with this amount of parking.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I agree with even the sentiment of parking. I wish we were walking and riding bikes and we had really great transit, but I think, as we work towards that, we may still be 10 to 20 years from actually implementing that type of thing. And one of the ways, observation is kind of handy in a situation like this. So like the way we set this up and the way we're thinking about it, in addition to what Ed is explaining, is right now the residential as we have it put together is 52.4% parked. That's probably the lowest of any other residential around. It's 235 spaces for 448 beds. That's 52.4%. The rest of it we attributed to the commercial and retail. And most of the time, in downtown, we don't have to, in the code, we don't have to park in CD. But what Ed said, what Mr. Lynn says, we have realities for those things where it does create more traffic when you drive all the way up Clayton and all the way down Hancock and, and looking for a parking space. So we do have little public spaces like the Classic Center you can park in Washington DAC, but most of downtown, you're waiting for a space to show up, especially in the evening. So what we were looking at, and I think this is just more of a conversation, I think, for us all. Like, it's not necessarily this project, but I just love to be able to throw this out there because I think it's something we all collectively can figure out, but it's going to take some time. So if you give me a little bit of a minute here, use an example like the Bottle Works. I think we all kind of experienced that at some point or another. There's 6 more or less restaurants there, Seaberry, Hendershot, Geneva, all this. So they have 39 surface spaces and 93 in that lot. Never mind like the development that's coming in a minute, but that we're not involved in. But just as it's been, our experience of it on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Wednesday night, it's kind of hard to find a space. You'll get one usually, but it takes all of that. There's only 11 or 12,000 square feet of restaurant space there, counting little tapped and so on. By my quick assessment, like the way you follow our parking guidelines of one parking space per four top, or one per 100, but we usually go to like a 4-top seating. They need 149 spaces to follow just general parking code. They have 132. So, and it actually is used, like we can go there and see that that's always full. And so when we bring in more restaurants than the Bottle Works, we at least need that many spaces. So this is, and they have staff that park as well. And so that's kind of how we look at it, is what makes a viable restaurant space until we have the robust transit system. Even if it's a park and ride, we don't even have that, from downtown somewhere. So we talk about it kind of in a utopian way, and I do too. I mean, I've been doing, we learn about it in school that way, but then we've got to observe, like, how do we do this? So what we're trying to do is not end up with, it was actually shown in the previous project, they showed the mark. I don't think I'm offended. Everybody's gone there. Showed the mark. I mean, we all seen that. I mean, it's just dead retail. The standard, it's got dead ground floor retail, because those types of big box student housing projects, they don't even perform that space. They don't care. They just check the box, this much retail, and nobody goes in there. You can still look in the mark and see metal stud. That's been there. What we're trying to do, albeit all these comments, of course, but what we try to do is actually make something that's going to work, so we don't end up with big dead retail space. So that's kind of how we're looking at the numbers there. And it's not an argument at all. It's just more of a, we try and analyze these things as well. So it's a little bit of policy, it's a little bit of urban planning that we've learned, and then it's a whole lot of observation.
Thanks. I just, in the spirit of conversation with what you just said, wanted to add the alternate perspective for, everyone, that we are not at the level of transit that we need to be, or pedestrian, bicycle facilities. Who's going to ask their government to do those things when they can just drive them? There is the carrot and the stick approach to getting less cars on the road, and no one likes to talk about the stick because it makes it, you can look very unpopular when you say we should make it a little bit harder to park sometimes. Now, that is not to say anything about this specific one, this specific parking situation, very unique, but in the spirit of general discussion that you brought up, I just wanted to throw that out there. Maybe we should be thinking generally about not always making it super easy to drive everywhere.
Anyone else have a comment they want to provide to the applicant? Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you. Okay. Next item, the 2023 comprehensive plan planning update.
Stretch.
It's a big tax.
Yeah, for the time.
Lay on up there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Before I came, late.
Lost man. Be honest, I think, and Alice. All right, we'll wait.
It does take a little bit.
I'm happy to talk while you're stretching.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to be in the room.
Is there any reason I can't shut that door?
Here, I've got it.
You got it.
We just have to remember to open
Yeah.
it back up or else we end up with a bucket of water
Oh,
here instead of an ice
okay.
machine. Go ahead. All right, just by way of introduction, tonight was the night that we wanted to make sure that you are all aware of where we are in the process with the 2023 comprehensive plan, which is essentially an update of the 2018 plan. The process that we've described to you in previous months and that we worked on with the steering committee so diligently has gotten to the stage where we have a draft, where we have cleaned up data, where we have brought it into today's terms, and we feel pretty confident that the document together represents all the input that we received from the steering committee and from the various spectacle experts that we met with and the handful of stakeholders that we engaged to make sure that we were getting our language correct. I do want to make it crystal clear though, and it may have come up during agenda setting, and I apologize for putting in on that. This process is not writing a new comprehensive plan. This process is doing two things that hopefully will scratch the itch of wanting to comprehensive plan, which we totally want you to feel itchy about. This is satisfying requirements with the state, it's on target with their submittal requirements to make sure that we're doing our due diligence with our 2018 comp plan and reporting all of our accomplishments the past 5 years. This is also being used by the department and by the steering committee as a kickoff, but a much more broad-reaching, in-depth change that we want to propose with our next comprehensive plan. So the way the state has set it up, we have these 5-year planning intervals, but every 10 has been our practice when we do a really big breakout, when we start fresh or try to. We've been pitching since 2018 to do the big breakout. And through a variety of international issues as well as local issues, that big breakout has never happened, but we finally have the green light from the elected officials to do so starting in January. And that first step is going to be revisiting our growth concept map in earnest and having a future land use map that responds to that and having extensive community input in the way that we normally do our comprehensive planning. So what you have before you and what's posted on the website is a step. It is a moment in time where we are satisfying state requirements. It is a moment in time where we're engaging the community and we're reminding them of what we had in 2018. We're also putting out there what we've done over the past 5 years to implement some of the things that were in the 2018 document. So that's what I want to start off with. What you have in front of you that I passed out are some public information sessions that we're going to be holding largely next week. They do spill into the week after. These are moments for us to engage with the community and explain the process. Let them know what it is and also start talking to them to get them excited about what's going to come. We want to demystify this process. We want to be as transparent as possible. We're not trying to overpromise what this document is. What we are trying to do, though, is find out who wants to be a part of that bigger effort that we're going to start in earnest in January. So those meetings are all being held at fire stations. We're blessed to have some fire stations, especially the newer builds that have community rooms. They're quite nice. They, by design, are distributed across the community, so that's very helpful. We did not want to hold a community input session in this building. That's not the point. The point is to go out and talk to folks. Our normal practice for public input is always to invite people into our office, to always invite online submittals, to entertain phone calls, and take any opportunity we can to explain. The other thing that we have done, and I've started over the last 2-3 weeks, is I've been working on these dates. I've been running across people that we've talked to over the past year, some people that we haven't talked to really since 2018, and they're pretty excited to be a part of what's coming in the next year. So some of the noteworthy ones include hospital staff, community outreach from the hospital. Some of the outreach operations from the university. Envision Athens staff, which is new. Had a really good conversation with the new leadership there about what transpired prior to 2018 and what that was designed to be and what their hopes are for Envision Athens moving forward. And they're actually going to have some of their stakeholders actively come in and sit with us and talk about what's to come. So tonight was meant to be just a quick checkpoint to let you know what's happening with these public meetings, to hear from you also, though, about what was in your packets, what you had a chance to look at, or what the links in the email. If we are off track, if there are any questions about it, if something was vague or fuzzy or worthy of edit. We don't have to do those line by line here tonight if you don't want to, but we would certainly want to hear from you. Emails are great. Markups are wonderful and encouraged. Happy to do that. So with that, I'm going to stop.
The only other thing I would add just real quick is, obviously I'm a paper guy. If any of y'all want a paper copy to work through, just let us know.
Yeah.
You'll shoot us an email. It may take us a couple days, but we will get you a hard copy.
Absolutely.
Is there any way to see what was changed?
Like a track changes,
Track changes.
we can definitely do that.
Is the 2018 comp plan online?
Yes.
But yeah, if we, it's possible to generate a track changes, that would be
Would be really helpful.
super
'Cause
helpful.
I'm already pretty familiar with 18 and I'd like to see that.
So I want to be real clear on that. We didn't take the 2018 document and change words. It's a whole new format. It's a whole new everything. So we have a working version of it that was then reformatted by staff into something that was far more pleasing to the eye than what we had before, in our opinion, anyway.
It is. Mine as well.
So we can do a track changes, but it's going to be kind of lumpy, but it might help you see what we did. Okay.
Phase.
Yeah,
But in that previous document.
I was just gonna say, I don't.
I'm sorry.
For though, like, maybe reviewing the 2018 document and then going to the new one, because yeah, I feel like there's gonna be stuff, because you're gonna look through 2018 and be like, well, what is this? What is this? And then you'll go to the new one and be like, it'll be completely gone in some places, you know? Right? Or like completely reworded.
Thank you, steering committee member. I would love for y'all to join in this, describe what we wrestled with as a committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume that you asked for that. I just thought about the way the kind of pieces of text were worked with and the way we did it. I can't imagine. I can't imagine y'all being able to do that without it doesn't feel very possible, actually.
So are you suggesting that it would behoove us as planning commission members to ourselves pull up the 2018 comp plan and staff, I guess it gives paper copies if we wanted it,
I think so.
go through that and then go through this?
Yeah, and kind of like go back in time to Envision Athens and all the stakeholders meetings that we had and the different groups and the different, there were very specific things that Envision Athens focused on.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened and other things happened, and now it's kind of like, oh, isn't that quaint? So there's just some parts of it where they're not really relevant anymore, so.
I think generally the steering committee and I think staff, it's fair to say that this was not the moment to rework the plan in the way that we all, I think, were really wanting to do. It's not what's being asked of us, and it's not a very good use of time when we're going to start into the comp plan update or the next real comp plan, not that far in the future. So if you look at it really closely, you're going to want to change tons of things like we did, and we just all had to be pretty content with being okay with just getting some of the numbers updated. There's a little bit of redundancy, even kind of the general format. I think none of us would really choose that format. The sort of policies, strategies, or
Talking about 2018?
all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was part of that.
We were all part of it. Some of us were part of that process. We know it was a little bit not the ideal way to do it, but I guess I would just kind of in support of staff time. I just can't even imagine how you would get that track changes document.
It
There
would
might
be a pretty muddy comparison,
Yeah.
but I think your suggestion of look through the 2018 document, and if you wanted a print copy to look at at the same time, or dual screens, or just read it, stop, and then look at what is in front of you, what's currently being talked about. I think the differences should hopefully jump off the page. And hopefully you'll see them as improvements in terms of clarity, because that was one of the things we wrestled with as a steering committee, was the redundancy, was some muddy language. And to be fair to the Envision Athens process, the goals that they were going for were far greater than a comprehensive plan has been in the past. And it was a paradigm shift in trying to be designed for inclusivity in a whole new way. And it was, I think, to be applauded for that initial design intent. It then became untenable. And I think that's where we ended up with the document that we had. So anybody have a chance to kind of look through what has come out yet? We've got time, but go ahead.
I assume at the beginning of each of these sessions that someone from staff, you or someone, are going to kind of give some bullet points about the primary, or what are you going to say?
So each of these information sessions, they're going to be drop-in format. We will start at the beginning with a little bit of an overview. But as people come and go, we'll revisit that overview as needed. The hope with it is to spend this much time talking about what's in front of them, making sure they understand it, revisit how we got to the point where we are as needed, but then really spend time talking about opportunities in the future for being involved, who they are, where they're from, what their concerns may be, and start to build that stakeholder list for this next effort.
And so do you see the goal of these sessions to be more about explaining the process, gendering a little bit of excitement about it or interest in it, versus feeling like you've got to lay out here the 6 main changes we made, or here are the 6 main portions of text? Or
We're not going to wear them out with state requirements. We're going to talk about content, we're going to talk about process, but we're going to talk about where do they engage moving forward. So to make it relevant to the people that come.
I know tonight's not the night to like talk through our ideas or comment about it, since you've been racing to get it done. We just got it a couple days ago. But will there be another chance? I know you have these meetings coming up in December, and we're not meeting again until January, but will there be another opportunity for this group to do that? To if once we've had a chance to read it and make any markups that any of us might make, to talk about it as a group, rather than just me emailing you 10 comments and other people emailing you comments. Like, I think the collective discussion might be fruitful. Is that part of your plan?
We didn't have a date set for another meeting with Planning Commission, like a work session format. Is maybe that what you're thinking about? A single topic kind of meeting?
Maybe, or if the January calendar were light, it might work to tack it on at the end of that meeting. I don't know how busy that is, but maybe it could be.
Super light.
No,
It's never.
there's more items than words.
When we put the timeline together, we did consider a standalone meeting for the night that you make a recommendation for forwarding it on to the mayor and commission, to then forward it on to the state for their review. Because you're going to see this at a minimum 2 more times. Once in January to forward it for the state to start the review, and then once after that review is complete to actually recommend adoption or adoption with changes. So you're gonna get those 2 opportunities, and there's a space in between. So obviously we want to have it as complete as possible before we send it to the state. Absolutely. If there's an appetite amongst the group to hold a work session format for those folks to come in that are interested in providing comment, not necessarily something that requires a quorum. If a quorum is present, we'll obviously have advertised. We won't be in trouble, but we wouldn't have to have a quorum to talk.
When is our January meeting? What's the date of that?
The 5th.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it would make sense to maybe give folks like, for you guys, what would be useful to know? Like, if somebody did want to give feedback in a slightly more formal setting than just emailing you all, what would be the timing that would be needed for that? Would it need to happen before the next?
I mean, the goal is to have it at the Mayor and Commission for their February session. In fact, that's what we promised. For them to send it on to the state. for
And does
review
that
and
mean
comment.
that the planning commission has to make a recommendation on it
Prior to
as January?
Well, it has to be just prior to. We can submit something to them more or less with title only. This isn't a zoning action. This is going to be an agenda item. So we could get that on their agenda. Obviously, within a couple weeks of the voting session of the Mayor and Commission is our cutoff, because they got to have some assurance of what y'all, if it changed, they need to have the thing that's changed.
So there could be meetings such as you're describing that would be publicly advertised but it's not, there's no action taken. It's more of a, so we could do that after our January 5th meeting.
I mean, just to throw a suggestion out, I mean, if you guys wanted to have a special called sometime between, like a work session format, sometime between now and the 5th, if there was a way to do that, I know it's tough with the holidays, that could be done.
Yeah, that's what I think is probably going to be hard to make happen. But what you're suggesting is that
Well, like Tuesday, that's still, if there's a bunch of changes, it's hard to get it turned over and back in front of them in a couple of days.
I mean, I honestly, I don't feel the need for that kind of meeting myself. I think that we've already had, a subcommittee, the planning commission working on this. I really feel like I can read through this, and I can email Bruce and CC everyone else in this room. And so I'm okay with that timeline, but I'm just trying to think through what.
I agree. Maybe if you all can just think of a date by which you need that feedback.
Fair enough.
That would be the way, that would probably be most important.
And if you send us an email, then we could all use that to reply all.
Okay.
Because, you need to get feedback in time to incorporate it before we make a recommendation on it at our January 5th meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then from the public meetings coming up, do you anticipate getting some feedback that would make changes to the document from those meetings too?
We're not ruling it out.
Okay.
But, the nature of those meetings, if we've got a problem in the document, we need to know. The nature of those meetings is really more informational and not about.
So like, it's a one-way street in intention.
At this point in time, it's more educational and less.
Yeah, one-way
interactive. Yeah.
Didactic.
At this stage.
Yeah. I'm not complaining or criticizing.
Well, I'm self-critical.
You're afraid.
You're
afraid of being considered.
I'm not afraid of that. I just wish we weren't.
Mhm.
So let's put it that way.
That makes sense.
One thought I had looking at that slide, which I think is also the cover page of the update, I wonder a little bit about calling it something different, because it's not actually the 2023 comp plan, right?
I think the word update should be.
Mid-cycle update of the
No,
2018 plan?
that's what the state needs it to be called.
Oh, okay. They've got it in the little blue banner there.
Yeah, we stuck in a subtitle and that's about as good as we could get.
Yeah, that's funny. It's just baked in confusion.
Yes.
We can handle it.
Well, the state does not do this like off cycle every 10 years. Like every 5 years is supposed to be a full update now. It used to be that you did like a partial update and then you could do a full update and then you could do a partial update. That has since changed. Obviously, we're a little late in the game to get to that for us. But that's the state's expectation moving forward, is that you have every 5 years as a fresh thing.
Time is sped up since the old days, right?
Public engagement, all that.
Oh, yes.
Well, and and part of the problem with that is too, and it's a state level issue, but I mean, we begin 2 to 3 years in advance, probably more than that, 4 years with capital funding requests for that update. And, you know, it takes a significant amount of time versus other communities that they have their 2 required or 3 required public meetings and their staff drafts a document and it goes through a cycle of review, and they don't do it like we do. So for the larger communities or for the ones like Athens, it's hard.
Do you need any other feedback from us at this point? Other than we'll just wait from you all to get a date by which.
Getting that date is super helpful. It's a great idea. If anybody wants, I mean, we're here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So if somebody wants to talk this through, if there's something you've read that doesn't add up, please reach out to me, reach out to Stephen, and we would enjoy talking to you. And we want to make sure that the wording is clear, that the intention is understood. Again, that we're not overpromising what this document is, although I agree with you with the title. But we really do want to use this as an engagement opportunity to get people kind of stoked for the much bigger thing that we want to achieve and that we've been wanting to achieve. And now we've got that opportunity. So the closing thing I would kind of throw out there is it stinks, but planning efforts work better when there's a real or perceived emergency. You get engagement, you get people concerned, you get buy-in, you get people willing to give their time and effort to think things through. And I think in 98 and 99, we had buy-in that was significant because we had a perceived emergency on 2 levels. We had people that were extremely concerned with our development patterns, and we had people that were extremely concerned with the first consultant that was hired because they were wholly satisfactory and upsetting. So when we pivoted away, we had so many people involved and we had this really great surge of sort of civitas that pushed us to get things done. And we did. And so I'm trying to find the silver lining in the 5-year delay that we've experienced because it's been frustrating. I think the silver lining is people want this to be different. They're not satisfied. They're critical of it, picking at our policies and our lack of discussion, our opportunities that have been missed, and why is this quarter looking the way it is? And so we've got this energy rising up again that we need to capitalize on and turn into a product that guides us for change. So that's what we want. That's what we want 2023 to be all about, is putting that together and seeing how much we can get done. And then what that finish line looks like in 2024 by interpreting those new land use policies, code, and actionable items. There you go. But thank you. Thank you for looking at it. Thank you for letting us know whatever you're going to let us know. Thanking you in advance, and we'll get you a date tomorrow.
Can I register now my request for a paper copy? Because I don't review well on.
If we're doing that. I usually am fine with the screen, but with a document like this, I need to be able to work.
Far better to do this one in paper than the 2018 because
yeah.
You remember when you had appendices, it's like 550 pages.
I might have.
And this was like 100 or so?
It was 80.
Okay.
I might have the 2018 somewhere in my house or someone.
There you go. Okay, so at least 2?
3, because Sarah wants 1 too.
Yes?
I registered my request.
You registered early.
Really?
Get that through.
All right.
Only as a commissioner, how about that?
Okay, I have a comment actually. One more comment for the parking discussion. I'm gonna send everyone Don Shoup's bridge key to parking everything. And Sarah, since you asked about this earlier, there's this whole world of parking management, which means pricing the public supply of parking.
You can get like a graduate degree in that. I mean.
Yeah, but we can do a little more than we do it. And it's not our purview, but it impacts, parking provision on sites so much. So stay tuned for an email. All right, let's discuss further.
I want to work on a memo about handicap permit spaces.
I love it.
Sounds good. Okay, Brad, do you have a report for us?
The due from Tuesday night, 4 items. 1065 Oglethorpe was approved. There were a couple of condition modifications that were implemented by a commission-defined option, but it was approved by the mayor and commission. Beefed up the buffer. Y'all had some buffer discussion towards the end of your meeting last month, and you added the condition, and it was kind of,
Parking along.
yeah, I mean, it was kind of all over the place, and where y'all landed was because I went back and checked, and I watched the meeting, and you ended up, the condition was a 10-foot buffer with either a fence or plantings or both, but you never said 10-foot buffer where applicable. And so the problem that created was we got two townhouses at the very end in the back that were in the buffer, just barely, but they were in there. And so they were either going to have to move or we were going to have to modify the buffer language a little bit. And so that's what the commission did. We had an area up front around the daycare parking too that was encroaching.
Usually the buffer along that parking space.
And it wasn't a big deal, but so we had a commission-defined option that provided flexibility on the width, no less than 5 feet, but they could be reduced to 5. And then they wanted, the Breckenridge neighborhood next door had asked for some additional plantings. And so what you will end up with is a buffer with a fence and then a series of native larger evergreens that are put in, and they're not going to be packed in because the condition was 6 to 8 feet, which is a significant size plant at the time of putting it in. But the spacing will be equivalent to 2/3 of the mature width of the plant. And so, they're probably, it's the way they're not going to be planting 700 6-foot tall bushes down that property line. But I think that was good. And then the crosswalk, the development group has committed to provide funding to modify that crosswalk in its current location to get across the street from the school to this by doing a raised crosswalk with the RRFBs and significant amount of money that they've agreed to put in towards that too. But that was approved. Lexington Road was approved, and we talked about it a little at agenda setting if you weren't here for that. The condition that you placed on it at your meeting last month that removed the requirement of the escape lane on the drive-through. You said they didn't have to meet that standard. If it would have been a planned development, that would have been perfectly fine. Because it was a special use, it's either got to comply with standards or they've got to formally request variances as part of their application, and it's got to be evaluated accordingly and in the report. And so I had to, procedurally, we were out of order by doing that, so I had to put it back. It's not a big issue, except that the Whataburger engineers evidently didn't notice it until the end. It's essentially adding about 3 feet of asphalt on the backside of the drive-through lane that goes around behind the building, and then modifying the spacing on the menu boards, and it'll be fine. But so that was approved. The economic development text amendment on the science and research facilities was approved. And then the ADUs went through a series of motions. And this may be, and I've done this a long time, this may be the first time I've been involved in one quite like this, because we had a commission-defined option that went first, and it limited the ADUs to a single bedroom. And then we had a substitute motion to basically agree with the commission-defined option, except for the 1 bedroom, and they changed it to 2. So we voted on the substitute motion, and it passed, but it only passed by a vote of 5 to 4. And it takes 6 votes to adopt an ordinance, so it was not approved. So then they went back to the original commission-defined option. We had 2 commissioners that didn't necessarily agree with the bedroom switches, and so they switched votes when it went back to the original motion, and it passed 5 to 4, but no ordinance. And so at one point they thought they were finished, and then realized that the introduction of a commission-defined option, if it does not pass, does not eliminate the recommendation that came from this body. So they still had the recommendation that you all sent them. And by this time, one of our commissioners had left. We were down to 8 at that point. And so they agreed to go back. They voted on y'all's recommendation that you sent forward, and it ended up in a 4 to 4 tie. And the mayor broke the tie in favor. And so you had a third 5-4 approval, but no ordinance. And so basically at that point, by default, it does not pass. And so it,
If y'all want to really see something else, sorry to interrupt you, Brad, just go back and stream that particular discussion.
it was late to be
Yeah,
trying to.
and yeah, and they were late. If the people, that was the very end of their third meeting of the night, and all three meetings that. Yeah, but yeah.
So I am sure there are conversations taking place in terms of next steps with our elected officials. I really haven't been privy to any of that, so I can't give you any information, but our work program basically calls for us to deliver the amendment in December for them to consider, and then puts it on hold until we pick back up with a more comprehensive look at it through the missing middle process. If that is subject to change at the direction of the mayor and commission through the manager's office, then we'll have to move some things around, but we're going to be very committed to not moving around our future land use map anymore. So more to come on that one, but that's an update from Tuesday night.
It's like winning the SEC championship and then losing the national championship, kind of. That 5-4, those 5-4 votes.
Well, and the other part that I think is interesting that I don't have an answer for, certainly I'm not an attorney, but can you reconsider an action that never happened? I mean, it says you can reconsider a denial of an ordinance in our zoning ordinance, and it's very clear in there, but it technically was never denied. It just failed to be approved by the lack of 6 affirmative votes, and that may count legally as the same thing.
I mean, like bringing it back in January. What's?
Well, the commission prior to adoption of their minutes at their next meeting in our ordinance, they could, a member of the affirmative group of voters could make a motion to reconsider.
Like, you're saying basically that is sort of the fundamental question is.
Well, it's just something I thought of.
To approve doesn't pass, is it implicitly denied? Or can you go back at it?
Is it the denial of a zoning change as indicated in our ordinance that would then allow them to have a motion to reconsider? And that's why I'm not a lawyer, because I'm going to let somebody else make that call, but
yeah,
we will do whatever they tell us to do, obviously, but more to come.
Thank you, Matt. For work on that one.
Still in the game.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, any other announcements or comments?
I wanted to commend Sarah on finishing your thesis and having it be.
Yay.
Like, you've seen it from.
Yes, I submitted it last night.
And we got to commend Bruce for being like, hey, I just changed my degree program from non-thesis to
Yes.
thesis. Can you read this in like 1 week?
Yeah, last minute, I had to add a 4th committee member. Bruce came through these super valuable comments, actually, that made it way better, I think.
I enjoyed reading
So,
it.
thank you.
It was very good. Very, very good. And we're going to use it. It's going to be a reference. Absolutely. When are we having that?
I can't
Yeah, when do we get to
wait.
read it?
Yeah.
Well, I think a presentation would be in order.
Well, can we have a special work session?
Maybe
Maybe
with
sometime?
American.
Well, especially because it's about Missy Middle, right? I mean, yeah. So
It's a university town.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
do that.
yeah. So I'd say let's make that like February or March sometime and have a work session.
That'd be great.
Yes. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's it.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.